All right, let's get it. Drive time Tuesday afternoon. 7 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. Rainy, chilly, cold. September, Tuesday afternoon, as we are about to turn our calendars to October. But as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic, Porter Larson behind the glass, producing the program today. Booking the program today, the Major League Baseball postseason is underway. Wild Card Tuesday, best of three, both in the NL and the AL. We'll keep you up to date on the scores. So, spoiler alert, if you are driving around town and you've recorded some of these games, you're going to head home and watch them. Just keep in mind, we're going to update you on the wild card scores. The Padres are leading the Cubbies right now 1-0. That's the bottom of the fourth. So Major League Baseball postseason going on, and we'll keep you up to date on these scores. Yankees, Red Sox, little wild card rivalry action in a couple of hours from right now. So good time of year, a little bit of everything going on. Week 4 of pro football came to a conclusion last night with a couple of Monday Night Football duds, quite frankly. The Bengals are in trouble. Broncos looked a lot better. Bo Nix, man, tell you what, if you're a Broncos fan, I know a lot of you are, had himself a night last night, but that was a bloodbath. And the Dolphins took care of the hapless New York Jets, who don't do anything very well as of now. If you're a Jets fan, if you're a Titans fan, you're already looking ahead to potentially the battle for the number one pick overall. No other way to say that. So the Tigers beat the Guardians earlier today 2-1. As I referenced, we're a couple of hours away from first pitch at Yankee Stadium in the Bronx, where the Yankees and the Red Sox will do battle. And then your late night game is the Reds and the Dodgers. Oh, I thought it was the Mets and the Dodgers. Why is it the Reds? Why am I not seeing? Oh, yeah, that's right.
You're going to do that?
Well, at least
we're going to do that.
Well, at least you save the collapse until the final week of the season. I mean, does that mean anything to you at all?
Not really.
Okay.
They were playing so well early that the kind of mid-season collapse readied us for this more so than the late one. It's still, you still got your hopes up once they, started playing a little better late summer. They did it twice to us, so it's just par for the course.
Well, let me tell you this: you have a really good owner. You have a really good owner who will spend a lot of money, more so than past iterations, and at least this owner isn't going to be thrown in jail for a Ponzi scheme.
Well,
so that's progress.
And luckily, the salary cap situation in baseball is a little different. So, yeah, he doesn't have to set up shell companies to pay his best players.
Yeah, and that's progress, Porter.
Pay for the Clippers.
That's all we can ask for is progress. Speaking of which, Kawhi Leonard asked a bunch of questions by Ramona Shelburne today, and Kawhi clearly has been coached up to just deflect, or honestly probably has no idea what's going on, respectfully.
If Kawhi's doing an interview in September,
yeah,
you might think that something's afoot, or someone's at least saying, hey, you gotta do something about this.
Yeah, he was gonna have to say something. So NBA Media Days yesterday, the Jazz gave us about 5 hours of sound. I was combing through some of that last night while suffering through some mediocre NFL football, as my Jets lost again. The Bengals are, breaking news, in massive trouble. I wonder at what point do they take calls on Burrow? Because they're not close. And if you're Joe Burrow, even though, you can't stay healthy, you're probably looking around realizing that your career is going down the tubes. If you're the Bengals, I think it might be time to break it down. They looked horrible, but the Broncos looked really good. They're 2-2, a couple of wins at home now. And like I referenced, the Dolphins held off the Jets. Doubleheader, Monday Night Football. You heard the games on our radio station. Week 5 of pro football begins at SoFi, coming up in Inglewood, where the Rams will welcome in the 49ers, a divisional battle. Brock Purdy is questionable as he aggravated that toe injury, so it might be the Mac Jones show for the 49ers. But Week 5 of pro football ahead. Cowboys-Jets, Porter, early Sunday morning. Do we need to put, you know what? No. Maybe if you give me the points, there's no way I'm just taking the straight money line.
Do it. I dare you.
No, if you give me the points,
it'll make it interesting.
I'll have to look at what the spread is. The Jets, they don't do anything well. Like, they hired a defensive coach, and their defense is worse. Sauce Gardner took to social media. He is frustrated. So, NFL football, as we're inching closer and closer to what I call conclusion time in both the world of college and pro football. If you listen to the show, first of all, thank you. Second of all, you know that my whole thing early on in both college and pro football is observation, not conclusion. Well, as we approach Week 5 in pro football, Week 6 or Week 7, depending on how you look at it with Week 0 in college football, might be time to start to make some conclusions for Utah football, for BYU football, for the Big 12 as a whole, the national landscape of college football. Both Utah and Utah State on byes this week, and BYU welcomes in a West Virginia team that does not know who their quarterback is, already down to their fourth running back, without three of their offensive linemen, and a starting tight end is out as well. BYU is a 20.5-point favorite at home at LaVell Edwards Stadium in Provo for an 8:30 kick on Friday night. Good slate of college football on a national scale. We'll get to some of the storylines, of course, throughout the course of the show today. RSL badly in need of more points after picking up a win at home against a compromised Austin team, resting the majority of their starters for their Open Cup final match tomorrow. Rocky Mountain Cup style, the Crapids, at least that's what I call them. Rapids rolling to town for the final home match of the season for RSL. That's going to be Saturday at 7:30 at America First Field. You can see that game on MLS Season Pass. RSL is only 1 point out of the play-in race. They're looking to get up to 8 so they can at least host a play-in game, which would be kind of a wild card win, and you advance to the actual tournament. I don't think there's a chance they'd qualify for the playoffs. They're going to have to get up to 7th, and that would take a minor miracle. So RSL back in action as well. Tyreek Hill potentially looking at surgery. No official word, but that was a gnarly injury if you were watching Monday Night Football. So unfortunately, pro football marred by injuries early season, quarterbacks and otherwise. Colorado has been fined over their anti-LDS chants that rained down on BYU fans and the BYU players in Boulder. The Big 12 fined Colorado $50,000 and publicly reprimanded the school. I've never known what the public reprimand means, but that happened. So Colorado fined $50K, publicly reprimanded after derogatory chants from Buffs fans targeted the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints during Saturday's football game against BYU. Here is the statement from the Big 12, quote, "Hateful and discriminatory language has no home in the Big 12 Conference. While we appreciate Colorado apologizing for the chants that occurred in the stands during Saturday's game, the Big 12 maintains zero tolerance for such behavior. The chants of Bleep the Mormons were heard from the student section during BYU's win in Colorado. Colorado fans join Arizona fans, join Baylor fans. This has happened to BYU way too many times. It's a disgusting bad look. And, let me start off with some well wishes to our friends in the LDS community with a very tragic weekend on a number of different levels, losing the president of the LDS Church, Russell M. Nelson, a tragic attack on attending members in the Michigan area that saw 4 people lose their lives. So I know the LDS community here in the state and elsewhere is suffering. Thinking of you. Hope you're doing all right after a really, really sad down weekend. All right, our first guest today will be the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley. We'll talk some Utah football with Bill. Like I said, it's time to move into the area of conclusion and move out of the area of observation and talk about where we're at. Take an honest assessment of Utah football after 5 games with a bye week, hoping to get some players back who are injured, and look ahead to a massive, not just game against Arizona State, the next 3 weeks for Utah football, potentially the biggest 3 weeks of the season. You get a bye week to kind of get right, to get healthy, to figure some things out. You have a top 25 team coming into Rice-Eccles Stadium, and then you go down to Provo to take on a BYU team that so far has passed every test that's been thrown at them. Now, how heavy have those tests been? Not too heavy, but they've been able to stay clean. And young Bear Bachmeier has 10 touchdowns accounted for with 0 turnovers. He's the first BYU quarterback in the history of the program to do that. We'll do some pro football with our buddy Sam Bruckhouse from Sumer Sports. Talk a little Monday Night Football, look ahead to Week 5, which will start on Thursday at SoFi. Andy Larson will stop by. Andy was present for Jazz Media Day, asked some interesting questions of Austin Ainge and Will Hardy and others. So we'll do some Jazz with Andy today, maybe sneak in a little RSL. And then I'll be on TV with Dave Fox tonight, 10:35 on KMYU. We call that 5 Questions with Spence. Will Dave Fox answer the phone today? Will he be live in studio today? Do we know if that diva is actually going to join us?
I think he's planning on being in studio, but I see some rain out, so that could throw a wrench in things. He's not out on his boat in the rain. I know that.
Yeah, I don't know that. So usually when Dave rolls in studio, he walks over from the KUTV studios a couple blocks away.
Right.
But the rain might mess with the coif and the hair.
Right. He might not be in studio tonight. He might be at his home studio where I think if there's any like inclement weather If the sun's not out, they move the entire set of KUTV Talking Sports to Dave's palatial estate, I'll say, and he does the show there. From what I understand.
Well,
allegedly.
I told you I called Dave a couple weeks ago. We had to talk about a couple things, and it was about 11:30 mid-morning.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what are you up to? He said, well, not much. I'm just waiting for the cleaning ladies, and I might go get some lunch. I'm like, well, it's good to be Dave Fox while the rest of us are toiling away, picking the salt mines, doing 4 hours of radio every day. It's good to be Dave Fox.
Yeah, it is. It is good to be Dave Fox.
How's your Tuesday, pal?
It's good. It's good. It's good to be me as well. Not as good as Dave Fox. I don't have a cleaning lady. I don't have a home studio yet.
Not yet.
But we're doing good. We're doing good.
All right. So let's get to it. Riles will be our first guest on a Tuesday afternoon. But before Bill stops by, courtesy of our good friends, your good friends too at Prize Picks, it's time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
Prize Picks, best way to win cash this season on the Broncos, the Niners, the Raiders, whatever your favorite football team is during this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones are overhyped? You make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your takes into cash all season long on Prize Picks. It's very easy with this platform. That's why I always say you should try this. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if you get a couple of right, you can win up to 2,000 times your cash. For instance, things like this. Saquon Barkley, more or less than 1 rushing touchdown. Josh Allen, more or less than 270 passing yards. Bo Nix, more or less than 2 passing touchdowns. It's things like that. Really easy to do. Prize Picks is the only app that offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. For example, if you want to pick more on Josh Allen's passing yards, rushing yards, and touchdowns, now you can pick all of them in the same lineup, only on Prize Picks. You can follow other Prize Picks players directly on the app and copy their lineups in one click. Whether it's a friend, a celebrity partner, or just someone whose picks you like, hit the follow button and check out every lineup they create in the new feed tab on Prize Picks. Step number 1 is go get the free money. You should always do that. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play that first $5 lineup on Prize Picks. It is good to be right. All right, as I say every year when we get into the bulk of the college football season, first 3 to 4 weeks, it's always observation, not conclusion. Well, now we need to get into the space where we draw our conclusions to try to understand who Utah football is in the landscape of the Big 12. I think most people believe that Texas Tech has done enough, even though there's an argument to be made that Tech, outside of Utah, has not necessarily played a gauntlet of a schedule. But when you come into Salt Lake City, and even though that game was a 3-point game as we were moving towards the latter portion of the contest, you roll into Salt Lake City and you walk away with a 34-10 win over a program that is respected as the University of Utah, you're going to catch people's attention. So as you're kind of digging through people who analyze the Big 12 Conference, it does feel like the majority of the people I've either listened to or read believe that Texas Tech is kind of on that level, Tier 1 level by themselves. Now, Iowa State has stayed clean. They just smoked an Arizona team who some people think is a formidable foe at home, 39-14. They are on the road at Cincinnati this weekend. Cincinnati is an interesting team at this point to watch out for. I don't know that that is a team I would consider to be able to win the conference, but they're coming off a win at Kansas, a good win at Kansas. Their only loss of the season is to Nebraska to open things up. They're 3-1 overall and a road win at Kansas. So Iowa State still a favorite, even though they're on the road. So maybe we just include Iowa State in that top tier, but it does feel like most people believe Texas Tech, as a result of what they did to Utah here in Salt Lake, have kind of solidified themselves as the team to beat in the conference. Now, I will put the caveat in all of this continuously that it is still very early, but now we're getting into the bulk of conference play. And from a Utah football standpoint, there's an argument to be made that this is the biggest 3-week stretch of the season. Now, it's odd to say that when this week is a bye week, but you've got to be ready because you lose to Arizona State at home, and I'm not saying it's curtains, but I'm saying it's something like it. So if you want to compete and win a Big 12 championship, the Sun Devils here in Salt Lake City coming up 2 Saturdays from now, 8:15 kick time on ESPN, you can make an argument that that is a must-win for the Utes. If Utah football wants to have something to say about the Big 12 championship this season. But then the week after that, you go down to Provo for the rivalry game, the Holy War, whatever you want to call it. I think the Big 12 is trying to change the names of most of these rivalry games. But use this bye week to get healthy, whether it's Jackson Benny, Nate Ritchie. The Nate Ritchie injury, we have not heard official word just yet. It does not look good. So the injuries have not piled up the way they have over the past couple of years. But it doesn't matter who you are in the landscape of either college or pro football. Injuries are simply inevitable. This is not a contact sport. It is a violent sport, as I say all the time. BYU is dealing with some health stuff. Every team at this point after 4 or 5 games, as we kind of inch closer and closer to midseason, dealing with real injuries. Utah is certainly one of those teams. So utilize this week and then obviously next week when we get into game prep for ASU to get healthy, clean some things up schematically, make sure everybody's ready for potentially 2 of the biggest, potentially the biggest games all season long. Arizona State at home and then BYU on the road. Because if we follow the logic that Texas Tech has separated themselves as a result of maybe the most impressive win that any Big 12 team has, that's undressing Utah here in Salt Lake City, there's no reason to believe that Utah can't exist in that area right behind them. And I'm sure if you're Kyle Whittingham, if you're Jason Beck, if you're Morgan Scalley, you're already licking your chops at a chance to see those guys again. To show everybody that what happened here in Salt Lake is not the reality. Now, I'm not one to lean on the excuse of injuries. I always think it's a bad look, like after the fact, to be like, oh, yeah, our quarterback was hurt. Okay, well, you can't bring that up after the fact as some excuse. And even if you put the caveat on it, like I'm not using it as an excuse. Well, yeah, you are. If you utter the sentence, you're using it as an excuse. Did Devin look like himself? No, he didn't. And did Devin look better against West Virginia? Yeah, sure. West Virginia is a glorified high school team at this point with all their injuries. BYU is going to smoke them. A 20.5 point line for the Cougars in Provo against West Virginia. Let's see what you do now that the competition is back to a level where we can actually analyze who you actually are, with Arizona State rolling into town and then a road trip to Provo against a BYU team who, like I said, has simply passed every test that's been thrown at them so far. But now we move into week 6, week 7. We're getting close to the halfway point, which is wild. I say it every year. We all wait all summer long, all off season long for football to be back. And then we blink. It's almost over. So we're getting there. We're getting to the point where we have to move into the area of conclusion and move away from observation. All right, we'll catch a quick break, but more Utah football comes your way. Coming up on the other side, the voice of the Utes himself, my former radio partner, Bill Riley, is our first guest on a Tuesday edition of The Drive, and it's good to have you along for the ride right here on ESPN 700.
Bentley in motion. He's going to run to that right-hand side. Devin's got the 5, cuts it inside to the goal line. Into the end zone he goes. That's a touchdown. Second down and goal. Tia in motion. Dampier rolls to his right-hand side, throws to the end zone. Caught. Touchdown. Dallin Bentley all by himself in the back of the end zone. Third touchdown pass today for Devin Dampier. 60 minutes of football done here. Utah improves to 4-1 with a 48-14 win over the Mountaineers, and it's a great day to be a Ute here in northern West Virginia.
Major League Baseball Wild Card Tuesday. The Yankees and Red Sox will get going in about 90 minutes from right now. The Royals aren't on the schedule today. I wonder what happened to the Royals. Just kidding. Let's welcome him in. Voice of the Utes. Bill Riley, are the Royals the team throughout your life that has caused you the most consternation, Riles?
Yeah, well, no, probably the Chiefs. I mean, the last 7 or 8 years notwithstanding. I mean, when the Royals were good, they were really good, Spence.
Yeah, that's true.
When they weren't really good, they were just flat out awful. That was not the case this year. They missed being a wild card team by a couple games. But, yeah, there were lots of 100-loss seasons mixed in. The Chiefs were probably more angst because they had a lot of really good teams. You remember in the 80s and 90s with Marty Schottenheimer and others, they were really good, but they'd miss a field goal in the playoffs and miss the AFC Championship game. They had really good teams and kind of underachieved for whatever reason. So I would say the Chiefs caused me more angst in my life, notwithstanding the last 7 or 8 years. But because the Royals were, when they weren't good, they were just awful, and they were out of it by mid-April. So,
what are you willing to say about this year's iteration of your Kansas City Chiefs after winning a couple of games straight?
I think that the reports of their demise were probably greatly exaggerated. I mean, they didn't have their best 2 offensive weapons. Then they got Worthy back, and the offensive line's better. The defense is always good with Spagnuolo. I think they're good. I don't know if they're the best team in the AFC. Buffalo looks really good, but writing them off early was probably a mistake by some because I think they're going to get a lot better. And their schedule, it's hard all year long, but the first 6 games without Rice and Worthy and those guys were pretty tough. So I think they're going to be good. I think they'll be in the playoffs and in the mix later in the year.
I agree with that. All right, moving over to Utah. Let's start with a little bit of a macro viewpoint.
But what about the Jets, Spence?
You know what? I think Bill's breaking up. Will you make sure his cell's good? Because I think I said moving over to Utah. Look, man, you hire a defensive coach and you get worse defensively. Like, the Jets don't do anything well, Bill, but that's not breaking news. That's just kind of how it is every year.
You know, there were a lot of years where the Royals sent, Carlos Beltran and Jermaine Dye and Johnny Damon to the Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a chance the Jets could reciprocate and send Breece Hall to the Chiefs?
At this point, break it down. I mean, look at this QB class, although Arch hasn't looked great. Maybe it's the Dylan Gabriel kid, but a lot of people think there are 4 or 5 franchise quarterbacks. I say break it down and finally get a franchise quarterback that you can build around, right? So whether – I love Breece Hall. Garrett Wilson, that TD catch last night just reminds you of how special he is. But I don't care who it is, even if it's Sauce. I say break it down and build it up from the studs. That's where I'm at with the Jets.
I'll tell you this. The guy that the Utes are going to see here in a week and a half is, I think, an NFL QB and a first-round pick. I love Sam Levin. I'm sure we'll get to ASU at some point. But I think that kid's really, really good. Yeah,
I agree. And I think there are a lot of options that would be better than a recycled Justin Fields. But I digress, Bill. Here's where I'm at. So as I talk about every year, first 3 to 4 weeks, it's observation, not conclusion. But now we kind of have to move into the area of conclusion to analyze what sort of hand we've been dealt with both the conference and where Utah fits. I've heard and seen a lot of people tier this conference with Tech at the top by themselves, and that's the respect you get when you come into Salt Lake and do that to a Coach Witt team. So if we operate off that premise that maybe Utah has seen the best of the best in the conference, due respect to Iowa State and Arizona State and others who have stayed clean, as we now have 5 weeks and 5 games of Utah football behind us, what can we conclude after watching this team play 5 games?
I think the Utes are a really good team, Spence, but I want to see, because as you just said, they matched up against a team that's likely the best. I don't want to disrespect Iowa State because they're also undefeated, but Texas Tech looked really good in every aspect. And then when you put in your backup quarterback and he looks better than your starting quarterback, that's pretty impressive. So Utah matched up with them pretty well for about 3 quarters, and then the defense got tired, and the offense, it had a bad day. They weren't able to bully Texas Tech around in the trenches. They weren't really able to stretch the field throwing the football. And Dampier, as we found out, was not healthy. So a lot of that stuff went into it. All credit goes to Texas Tech. They were the better team that day. So Utah gets a get-right game last week against West Virginia. They look good. Now they've got 2 weeks to get ready for Arizona State. This is the game for me coming up. We'll find out. Utah met up with maybe the best team, went toe-to-toe with them for 3 quarters. Now they will have had a game plus some time to prepare. This game feels like a really big one for both ASU and Utah. ASU's undefeated in conference, but they do have the loss. They caught a couple of breaks in that win against TCU on Friday night, but still they found a way to win it. To me, this will be the real litmus test for Utah. If they're able to beat ASU, that means the offense has gotten better, the defense has gotten better. They've made those improvements since the Tech game. So I think this game coming up in 10, 11 days or so is a really big one to really tell us where Utah is in the big picture of the conference. And the other thing is, too, I don't know, Spence, if you can afford to have many more than 2 losses. I'm looking at the schedules, and I'm kind of looking at other people's schedules. Iowa State's schedule, very manageable. They also don't have to play Utah. Texas Tech's schedule the rest of the way, pretty manageable, and they've already beaten Utah. So there's some other teams that have maybe some scheduling advantages too. So if you want to play in Dallas coming up in December, you certainly have to take care of your business at home, and that's where Utah's going to have Arizona State.
Yeah, and to add another layer, you've already lost the tiebreaker to Tech, and you don't want to lose the tiebreaker to Arizona State, because if there is some sort of scenario where 2 L's get you in, you don't want to be looking up at the 2 teams you might be competing with, and then that tiebreak keeps you out. But what can we ascertain about that trip to Morgantown? You know, they're down to, I think, their 3rd or 4th running back. They're without their starting quarterback. They're without 3 offensive linemen. And I believe they were without their starting tight end. I mean, you probably have better perspective here. Yeah. So an injury-riddled West Virginia team that didn't look like they belong on the same field as Utah until Utah decided to rest some of their starters. So what can we actually take away from that dominant win against West Virginia?
It's a little bit, to me, Spence, like the UCLA win earlier this year. You hammered a team you should have hammered. West Virginia is kind of in that mode you were talking about with your Jets. They've kind of torn it down to the studs a little bit. 83 new players this year. Rich Rod brought in 83 new players to that team. He's trying to figure out in real time. He's a really good coach. They love him in West Virginia. This is kind of this year doesn't count. He's just trying to figure out who he has and build the culture and stuff like that. Even if they would have had all those guys you mentioned that were out, Utah is still the much better team. They were going to win in the trenches. West Virginia is not very good in the trenches. Utah just pushed them around and did exactly what you're supposed to do against a team that's kind of in a rebuild mode like West Virginia is. So I think that's the part you like. They got the late touchdown with some backups in. They dominated all the way. So they did what you were supposed to do. And it was a get-right game. After that Tech loss, they go on the road. They're there for a couple of days. They played well. You know, they had a couple of injuries in the game. We'll see how those play out moving down the line. But I think all in all, you did what you were supposed to do against a team that's, you know, in rebuild mode.
I want to revisit a couple of conversations that we had kind of preseason and throughout the course of the first couple of weeks of the season. We had Scott on yesterday. I kind of asked him some of the similar questions, but I want to get your take. The number one question that I think most people had as far as position groups was the wide receiver room. and who wide receiver one was going to be. Did we just overthink it? Is it pretty simple? Is Devin just comfortable with Ryan? I mean, Ryan Davis, 36 catches, that's 6 in the country. Is this just a matter of these two knowing each other, or does he just get open?
I think it's both. I mean, obviously they have a history together last year. They know each other, but I think Ryan Davis is just a really good wide receiver. Not a burner, not a guy, not a take the top off the defense guy. But you got to remember, he's a fifth-year guy, Spence. He played 2 years at UAB. He's also battled some injuries, too, through his career, but he's played quite a bit of college football. So he knows how to get open. He knows this offense, and he's got a relationship with Devin. So, yeah, I think we probably did. I think we probably just discounted him because nobody talked much about him. And he was a little beat up in the spring, too, so we didn't see him a bunch in the spring. But, yeah, he's their best, most reliable wide receiver right now. And the second best is Dallin Bentley. He's got a real – I mean, Dallin's good, big target who's bided his time, and I think he and Devin have established a nice rapport as well. So they've got pass catchers. Now, do they have that all Big 12 guy? Do they have a Jordan Tyson like Sam Levitt has? No, they don't have that guy. They don't have a first-round wide receiver. They don't have a second- or third-round wide receiver probably either. But they've got guys that fit well within Jason's offense. They just, when they're able to run the football, everything else opens up. And that's where it starts with Utah. But I think they've got a good wide receiver room.
Has Devin answered the questions that we all had about whether or not the throw game would look the way it needed to in the Big 12? I mean, just simply his passing numbers a year ago did not jump off the page. What jumped off the page was how dynamic he was, an incredible dual threat who could really run the football. But it was 12 picks. It was 12 touchdowns. So far, 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. From your vantage point, calling all these games, has Devin answered these questions that we all kind of had about whether or not he can acclimate to the Big 12 level as a throwing quarterback?
Yeah, I think we're still a little bit of question there because, again, didn't see him healthy against Tech, didn't have the best day against Tech. Wasn't just him. The entire offense just didn't function at the level they wanted to. I think the real good test for him, again, like we were saying for the team too, is Arizona State. Good team. Is their defense as good as Texas Tech's? I don't know, but they're good, and they played together. So Devin's put up good numbers against lesser teams. Now he's, in theory, with a couple of weeks he was better last week than he was the week before. You like to think with a week and a half he's back close to where he needs to be at 100%. Then we'll see what he can do against Arizona State. I would still say the offense functions well, but if you get behind and have to throw, that's what we still have to see. And we didn't necessarily see that against Texas Tech. I hope we don't have to see that against Arizona State. But the fact of the matter is, at some point in time throughout the season, moving forward, you're going to be behind, you're going to have to throw, and we'll have to see how it goes.
So the running back, both snap count and then carry count, continues to show that Jason likes both these running backs. Wayshawn appears to have just a little more juice, if that's fair, as far as big play capability. He's nearly averaging 7 per carry, 42 carries, 280, 3 touchdowns. And then Akari with 59 carries, 250, that's 4.2. He's got 4 touchdowns. Wayshawn is responsible for the 2 biggest plays of the year. One was a rush. The other was a catch out of the backfield. So, you don't necessarily need a bell cow, and it feels like Jason likes these two. How do you think it's gone utilizing both of them, and how would you analyze both their strengths?
I think it's gone well. I think Rodgers is probably the tougher between the tackles guy. The Wayshawn runs there okay, but I think in the open field, when you get to that second level, I think Wayshawn's got a little bit more juice there. The thing that's going to be interesting for me, Spence, and we saw some glimpses of it Saturday, they've kind of introduced this freshman from Fort Worth named Daniel Bray. You saw him on a couple of jet sweeps. He had a handful of carries in the game, but he's got juice. I mean, legit speed. I talked to Teo Johnson earlier this year, who's a 10-800 guy. I was asking him, with you, who are the fastest guys on the team? He said, well, it's me, it's Smitty, Smith Snowden. And then he mentioned Daniel Bray. He said Daniel Bray can go. And we saw 2 or 3, 4 touches for him Saturday against West Virginia, but you could see it. So I want to see how they utilize him with those other running backs moving forward, because I think if you can get those tough between the tackle runs with Rodgers, a little bit more from Parker, but then add a little bit more juice with Bray, that might be a little bit of gasoline on the running back room fire right now that could really add some spark.
So when it comes to the Lander Barton Smith Stone experience on offense, do you think it's going to be week by week? Do you think it's something that is going to be put aside for now? I mean, there are some injury issues in the secondary. Maybe they just want to keep Smith on ice to make sure he's healthy. And obviously Lander's very important on that side of the football as well. So we just haven't seen it as much. Do you think it's on the shelf, or is it going to be situational?
Well, Lander was in a bunch on Saturday. They just didn't really throw him the ball very much. He wasn't necessarily involved. You know, I've asked Kyle this off the air on coaches' show nights, and he said they like it. They like what those guys bring. Smith's in. He gets some flares out of the backfield. I think it's, to your point, I do think it's situational, and I do think it's based on the opponent. And against teams that might throw it a little bit more, maybe they get a few less snaps. But Kyle's been pretty straightforward. He said, hey, we're only talking 20 or 25 snaps a game for these guys, and they're playing 50 or 55 on the defensive side. That's 70, 75 snaps, which is very doable. So I still think we're going to see it. I still think the guy that could be the best of the three is Jackson Benny. Benny's shown that ability to get behind the defense. He did get it looked like he tweaked an ankle or something on that play against West Virginia. He never went to the locker room or anything like that. He stayed on the sideline. But I think he, of the three, has the most potential to be an explosive player in the wide receiving room and pass game. But I don't think you're going to see them go away from it. But I do think their quote unquote snap count or pitch count is going to depend on the opponent.
No media for Witt this week as a result of the bye, but post-game, once again, and this is uncharacteristic of a team that's coached by Kyle Whittingham and whose defensive coordinator is Morgan Scalley, missed tackles. And, 10's not a massive number, but if Coach Witt is going to bring it up, then I'm going to talk about it too. Both Sean, during Crosstalk a couple days ago, and then Scott on the show yesterday, kind of surmised on the potential of lack of physical practices in training camp, maybe leading to missed tackles. Your thoughts on that? Is that an issue that they're going to try to clean up this week?
Well, I think they definitely think. He said to us on the post game show they're going to work on it in the bye week and work on some tackling. I don't know. I mean, you've played 5 games now. To me, it might just, again, I haven't broken down every missed tackle. I'm sure those coaches have, but I would be surprised if anything is still lingering 5 games in from training camp. I could see that in the first couple of games in the year, but I don't know if you can still go back to that 5 games in. I think you might have guys that are there. What I noticed, Nate Ritchie, when he would miss some tackles, he was there. He maybe took a bad angle or just didn't wrap up enough. I don't think it's from guys not being there. Sometimes the pursuit angle, they maybe over pursue or they just don't wrap up enough. But it feels like they've had guys there. They just haven't maybe completed the play. So, but moving forward with the opponents you're facing, especially in October, Arizona State, BYU, Colorado, and Cincinnati, you're going to have to tackle. But to your point too, Spence, 10, Kyle's always said single digits, 7, 8 missed tackles a game. 10's a little high. I think they had 23 against Texas Tech, which is way too high. But, if that number's coming down, I think that's a good sign.
So another big preseason topic was the defensive front and how they would replace essentially 5 contributors who either graduated or transferred. Clearly, John Henry Daly has been a revelation, and a lot of people he's got 6.5 sacks. Cash Dillon, the young kid, has 1.5. And then Logan, who has dealt with some injury issues himself, only 1 sack, and I think that was the first week. So mixed returns maybe? How do you think the defensive front is held up with all of these young players asking to play a lot of snaps?
Oh, I actually think it's been good. Logan actually had a couple tackles for loss against West Virginia. You mentioned John Henry Daly leading the league and tops in the NCAAs and sacks. Cash Dillon's been good. Paul Fitzgerald has been good. Lance Holtzclaw had a couple of nice tackles. And I think that their defensive tackles, they've had some injuries up front, but the young players like Pupu Sepulona and Carson Kafusi and some of those guys, they've been good too. And I think this bye week's good because hopefully you can get a guy like Dallas Vakalahi and Aleki Viamahi, who missed last week, back and healthy and ready to go. I haven't seen or noticed any real issue up front. I think it's been really good.
So you referenced the ASU game. Really, you could make an argument that starting yesterday, this is maybe the biggest 3-week stretch of the season. You get a bye week to get right. Jackson, others banged up, get them healthy. Then it's Arizona State here in Salt Lake. Then it's BYU in Provo. So this is a massive 3-week stretch, Ryle, starting now. What boxes do we want checked prior to ASU coming to Salt Lake 2 Saturdays from now?
I think you want the health box checked. You want to get people as healthy as possible for that game. And I think you want, you just want to feel good about where you are on both sides of the ball with your game plan and everything else. I think you can make a case, Spence, that ASU followed by BYU. If you get W's in both those places, you like the way the rest of your schedule plays out. I mean, they don't have to, Spencer, they don't go on the road again till mid-November. I mean, they go on the road to BYU, but they don't have to hop on a plane and go out of state until mid-November. If you can get W's against Arizona State and BYU, you then have Colorado, Cincinnati, and Baylor that are all solid, but nobody spectacular. K-State, who's underachieved, and Kansas, who one week looks like a world beater and the next week doesn't. So I think that these next 2 games, and obviously it starts with ASU on the 11th, really could be the barometer for how the season goes when you're talking about competing for a league championship.
Yeah, it's interesting to consider this league as a whole as we pan back a little bit. As we referenced, and I've heard more than a few people believe that Tech is going to be the class of the conference. Is it time to just simply say out loud that if you can't keep up economically with teams like Tech that have that oil money, it's going to be difficult to simply keep up, period? Because, Bill, if they're the best team in the league, it's because of one thing, and that's the power of the purse. I talked about this leading up to the Tech game and felt like Texas Tech was rolling into Salt Lake trying to prove a concept against a team in Utah that has proof of concept. Well, if that's the dynamic, Tech came here and proved their concept. But to me, their concept is one thing, and that's the power of the purse. If they really were able to accomplish in one off season to acquire enough talent to be the class of the league, what does that say to you?
Well, it says that they invested their money and selected well. The difference, though, Spence, is this is an outlier year for the time being because Tech and some of the other big programs that are the big spenders front-loaded their contracts. Okay. They poured everything into deals for this year before the July 1 rev share deal hit, the quote-unquote salary cap for college football. They will not be able to spend $50 million next year, nor will Oregon, nor will Ohio State. You can spend your revenue money, but you're not allowed to go above and beyond that rev share number. In theory, you can still work up. Players can get NIL deals in the community and stuff like that. But being able to spend 30, 40, 50 million in theory is supposed to end after this year. That's why they've hired the outside enforcement group to make sure everybody's complying with this rev share number, which will increase incrementally 4% every year. So what Texas Tech did was said, we're going to go all in while we can go all in with our oil money, with our billion-dollar boosters, and try to put everything we can. That's not to say they won't be able to work on facilities and create that atmosphere around the program still like Oregon and others have done for years. But the spending of $50 million in theory is not supposed to be happening moving forward.
All right.
So to answer your question, I think Tech if you have it and you have people that are willing to do it, spend it and see what you can do. They did the same thing in softball when they went to Stanford and got the Najee Kennedy, the best pitcher in the country, and paid her $1 million. She went to Lubbock. They didn't win a national championship, but they got to the championship game. So I would say that's pretty good return on investment. I don't know what Texas Tech expects for the return on their investment this year, but I certainly think a conference championship is probably in line with that.
Have you seen Weddle's kid play? Have you seen highlights of Gage?
I have not, but I've heard he's spectacular.
Yeah, I think we might need to make room for Ewed as a linebackers coach or something to get that kid in Salt Lake. By
the way, just so you know, yeah. Eric Weddle will be will be joining me on the Crimson Corner podcast this week.
Love it. Where can people find that, Riles?
Where you get your favorite podcast. It should be dropping tomorrow morning. We'll talk a little Utah football and hear from the great Beard himself.
Love
Eric
it.
Weddle.
Love it. Last thing, and then I want to talk to you about our friends at Handy and Handy. Obviously, it's a few weeks out, and we'll cover it prior to. But BYU's passed every test that's been thrown at them. The question is, how difficult have those tests been? They go down early in Boulder, come back and win. Bears got 10 touchdowns accounted for without turning the ball over. No BYU quarterback has ever done that. Are you buying BYU's quick start so far?
So far, yeah. I mean, they've checked the boxes. The only game I've really gotten to see them play much or in its entirety was that East Carolina game, and that was kind of an ugly game. I was flying back from West Virginia Saturday night, so I saw about a half a quarter while we were refilling fuel in Omaha on our plane coming back. So I saw a little bit of that. But, again, it's exactly what you would expect from BYU. They're really good defensively. And Aaron Roderick is trying to, dress things up around his freshman quarterback who, again, he looks like a freshman quarterback at times, Spence, but what he really hasn't done is made a bunch of mistakes. It's one thing if you're making highlight plays, but then you're also making highlight plays the other way as well. I think that they're doing a really good job based on what I've seen and what I've read, because I haven't seen a ton, of really playing to his strengths and not having him try to do too much, if that makes sense.
It does. Scott shared a little anecdote, a little story, so I need to follow up. Did you sample the moonshine that you were supplied with in Morgantown?
I did not.
Okay, smart move.
It's probably a good move. For those that didn't hear, we were walking to lunch on Friday, and some guy yells at us from a pickup truck across a parking lot, "Hey, Utah, get over here." I'm looking around. He's like, "You?" Guy had like a Utah shirt on. It's like, "I've got a West Virginia welcome gift for you." And I'm like, "Oh, geez." When those guys fly, and Scott didn't even go over. So I walk over, and it's an older guy in a pickup truck. So I wanted to welcome you to West Virginia. And he hands me a mason jar. He said, "I just jarred it last night. It's apple pie moonshine."
Oh, dear.
And I'm like, oh, well, that's not really my thing. He's like, just try it. Take it. It's great. I said, well, I don't really. He goes, I'm not taking it back. Just be nice to the Mountaineers on Saturday. Welcome to West Virginia. And he drives off.
It's the most West Virginia Morgantown story you could come up with. I'm glad you stayed away from it. All right, Riles, every Thursday, our friends from Handy and Handy stop by for Sports Court. What do we have going on with our friends before I set you loose?
Well, Preston and Garrett Handy are great guys. They're personal injury attorneys. They've run their own shop, over 40 years of legal experience between them. They're good people who do great work. And I always say I hope that none of our listeners ever have to call them, because that means you haven't been in an accident or somebody you love or know hasn't been in an accident, but odds are somebody's going to need one. And when you need that, you want somebody who's going to do a really good job, and that's what Handy and Handy Law do. So you can find them online at Handy Law Utah. You can hear them do Sports Court with Spence, but great guys, and I cannot recommend them highly enough. So if you need a personal injury attorney or just need somebody to listen to you, what you might have, give them a call or find them online at handylawutah.com.
I'll let you go so you can take your Aaron Judge jersey out of the dryer and wear it for the game, Riles. Thanks for the time, bud.
See you, Spence.
Bill Riley, voice of the Utes. Stops by today courtesy of our friends at IFA Country Stores. With IFA's Step 4 fall and winter lawn food, you'll get stronger roots now and an early green up next spring. It's the ultimate lawn owner power move. More at your local IFA or at IFA.coop. We'll catch a quick break. We'll move from college to pro football. Sam Bruckhouse joins us coming up. We'll bring in Andy Larson for some takeaways from Jazz Media Day. Dave Fox later on. I'll be on TV with Dave tonight at 10:35 KMYU. We call it 5 Questions with Spence. The Cubs have taken a 2-1 lead over the Padres. We're in the bottom of the 7th as it is the NL wildcard Game 1, best of 3, Major League Baseball playoffs, fall baseball rules. Keep you up to date on the program right here on ESPN 700. I got 1 hour down, 3 hours to go on this rainy, chilly Tuesday afternoon here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. About to turn our calendars to October. So whether it's college or pro football, it's probably time to move from observation to conclusion to figure out kind of what sort of hand we've been dealt. Week 4 of the NFL came to a close last night with a Monday Night Football doubleheader. And Week 5 will get going on Thursday night from SoFi as the Niners and the Rams will do battle. Brock Purdy did not practice today. He re-aggravated that toe injury over the weekend. Let's talk some football with one of our favorites. He's become a friend of the show, Sam Bruckhouse, on a Tuesday afternoon. Sam, happy Tuesday, buddy. How we doing?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate the time. So, as a New York Jets fan, tell me what we do well. Do we do anything well?
Y'all compete really hard. Look, we really come down to what you're seeing, and there's a lot of weird turnover luck that is happening. That's a good – it's obviously not a good sign, but sometimes that happens, and we've seen it happen a lot this year. I think the usage of Justin Fields' mobility has been great. Obviously, you want to keep him healthy as well. And I've liked how Tanner Engstrand, the offense coordinator who is coming from the Detroit Lions, has put forth the wide receiver Garrett Wilson. I think that's a major pro as well. We've also seen Breece Hall be pretty productive as well. The defense in particular, I think, just has to get better at stopping the run. And moreover, we saw how Mike McDaniel, who is basically a savant at the run game, you ask people who are around those Shanahan teams going all the way back to the Falcons, Texans, etc., and they say Mike McDaniel is one of the most creative offensive play callers and one of the best people at attacking defenses. And he was really able to put them through the ringer by running outside zone and then running boots off of that. It put them in some strange positions. It didn't seem as if they had the personnel really to match up. There were some injuries as well, but I think the defense is the major part where they have to start getting things figured out. And then the offense, they can kind of continue. I would like to see them pass a little bit more. The rush rate over expected is quite high, meaning that in situations typically where you would see teams pass, they go ahead and are a little bit more conservative. All that being said, I think this is a team that will come together as the year goes on. I think the level of competitiveness we've seen, given that they have basically turned over much of the offense and all of the coaching staff, is good. I think this is year one of a rebuild for all intents and purposes, and I think we want to continue to see them compete, continue to see them have their star players be effective, and then it'll start coming together towards the end of the season.
So I'm already looking ahead to this quarterback class as a Jet fan because, look, Justin Fields is fine. I mean, he's not – you could do worse. I understand that. Who's your favorite? And give me a couple of names. I was reading a piece today on The Athletic that was kind of zigging when everybody else was zagging, talking about the struggles – early season struggles of some of the quarterbacks that us NFL fans are looking at as saviors. Are there a couple of names you like coming up that you think, whether it's the Jets or whoever's going to be in the mix for the number one pick, should look at?
So going back to last year's draft class, when the discussion was that, you can wait a year and try to get a guy later because the 2025 class wasn't all that great. Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, who is slated to start this week for the Browns, so forth and so on. The discussion was that, the next year is very packed. I pushed back on that very early. I did not like what I saw last year from Garrett Nussmeier. He right now is slated to be the top. Obviously, that's going to change after his performance against Ole Miss. I do wonder if he is injured after watching that game. But I just didn't think that he had the athleticism or the ability to find completions that one could expect. I think this could be a year like previous years where there's been good talent that drops for whatever reason. We've seen this with Jalen Hurts. We've seen this with Dak Prescott. I think that's going to end up being what is going to happen. I'm not a huge believer in Drew Aller or in Garrett Nussmeier or in some of these other quarterbacks. I think it's quite likely that Nussmeier and Arch Manning in particular end up coming back. Some names I do like is like Taylon Green out of Arkansas. We did see Sam Pittman kind of get fired after a pretty brutal loss against Notre Dame, but I do think he has the tools to be an NFL quarterback. I think he'd be more of a mid-round to late-round pick who could potentially contribute if he's able to continue to play. He played at Boise State, then goes to Arkansas. I think Lenore Sellers is a player who could be similar to Justin Fields early on, and then you hope he progresses there is a lot of potential there, but I think you're playing with kind of the discussion of potential rather than like a true certified solid star. But you really look back at some of these drafts, and even the true solid stars haven't worked out perfectly. You think about Trevor Lawrence, one of the best quarterback prospects in recent memory. Hasn't exactly been great for him. Caleb Williams is starting to get it together. But it's really rare to hit on a quarterback. So I think that teams will have a selection of 6 to 8 quarterbacks that I think that they can feel good about taking a shot on. I just don't know if that will end up being in the first round.
The numbers won't jump out at you, but Brian Daboll's job certainly has to be called into question, and he had to do something to spark his team. Jackson Dart played his high school football around here, and he gets the start. And like I said, the numbers don't pop off the page, but the bottom line is you analyze the final score, and the Giants get the win with Jackson under center. What'd you make of that?
Yeah, I don't know how much you can put on Dart's play himself. Obviously, he was able to create with his legs in a way that Russell Wilson was a little bit more hesitant to, and I think that ends up making the difference in that particular game. I think the Chargers just getting decimated by injuries. You include Khalil Mack, Rashawn Slater preseason, now Joe Alt as well. It's just brutal for that team, and I think the shakeup kind of caused issues as the game went on. I thought that the move to Jackson Dart was a true belief in Malik Neighbors and Cam Scatteraboo as a kind of skill group nexus of young players. I have real questions now that Malik Neighbors has gone out. I think this is going to be a tough year. I think Dart is going to be asked to create with his legs quite a bit, and I hope that goes well for his health and his injuries because he does tend to play reckless and take hits rather than getting down. I didn't necessarily love the move at this part in the season. I thought it could have waited until midseason. But I think, frankly, at this point, especially with Malik Neighbors going down after having quite an excellent season thus far, it'd be a real struggle for the Giants to get over their win total preseason, which was 5.5. It'd be a real shock and, honestly, a real notch in Daboll's belt there if they are able to get to a 6 or 7 win team. And I think that's why he wanted to go all in on Dart, because building up a rookie quarterback into a team that can be competitive is a sign that they are moving in the right direction. I don't know if we're going to see it, but that seems to be the plan for the Giants brass.
Oregon rolled into town last year, and Bo Nix was the quarterback, and I was down on the sidelines, and Utah was decimated with injuries, but Oregon smoked them. And watching the way Bo controlled the offense up close was really one of the most impressive things that I'd seen. Obviously, Sean Payton fell in love pretty quickly. It feels like, a average start to the season. He was pretty dynamite last night. I think the Bengals stink, but the Broncos 2-2. And Bo, looked really good last night. So what do you make of what we saw last night, the start of the season overall, and what are you expecting moving forward in Denver?
Right now, they're sitting as an average team in both rushing expected points added and passing expected points added, which basically tries to put yards in context and show the actual impact that these plays are having. I'd be shocked if it goes over that. I think Bo Nix has really, really struggled. I think yesterday was a step in the right direction. He was able to avoid negative plays. Last year, his calling card was avoiding negative plays, and we just did not see that happen in the early season. I think if he could continue to try to get back to the spot where he was last year, where he is consistently not getting sacked and consistently not turning the ball over, that'd be a real win for a team that has a really, really great defense. But the way for this team to make the next step over a team that can get into the playoffs versus a team that can really make a run has to be Bo Nix. And I haven't necessarily seen any signal that he can certifiably make big plays while also avoiding negative plays. And I've been kind of disappointed in that thus far, but I am a believer that Sean Payton's process and his belief in Bo Nix's pre-snap reads and ability to get the ball out to some pretty good wide receivers, particularly behind a pretty good offensive line as well, should continue to develop. I just haven't seen it yet.
I'm not bringing this up because my first pick in my fantasy draft was Jamar Chase, and then I got Joe Burrow 3 or 4 rounds later. That's not why I'm going to ask you this question, although I'm deeply depressed. My question is, at what point does Cincinnati consider something drastic? And maybe we're not even close to that, because when Burrow's healthy, he's awesome. But they've look, and I think you could do worse than Jake Browning as your backup. But man, they have just looked horrific without Burrow, who's not going to be back until it doesn't matter. Where are you at right now with Cincinnati? At some point, is this a situation where the player might ask out? I mean, they look awful without him under center.
I think with regards to something drastic in particular, with regards to Higgins, Chase, and Burrow, the Bengals are pretty locked up. This is a team that really does not like outlaying cash, and they did it for all three of those players. And I really don't think that they want to see both the cash and cap hit that will result in letting those players go. Basically, it would be unprecedented for either of those players really to get traded. I think Jamar Chase, the closest comp you could really look up would be like Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek Hill was substantially older than Jamar Chase when he was traded. So pretty unprecedented. The question really becomes, like, how far can you get with this team with Jake Browning? I'm quite shocked that it's looked as dark as it has thus far. When he came in relief of Burrow 2 years ago, the trains pretty much kept running. There was a slight decrease in efficiency, but for the most part, he was able to fill in pretty well for a pretty good subset of games as well. I think the real change has been they've kind of gone to a under-center run-heavy system, and that's just not what the Bengals do. Right now they're sitting at like 29th in expected points added per rush. That's untenable, especially when you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on the outside. They just got to figure out ways to get the ball in those guys' hands, and I think bumping back to the kind of the shotgun RPO level offense that they were running with Burrow is probably the way to go. I'm interested in why they made this move. I'm sure we'll see some reporting come out about it as the weeks go on. But at the end of the day, I think basically this is going to come back to the Jamar Chase and T. Higgins show. Whether they can sustain it or not, the ball needs to get in their hands ASAP.
So Vegas told us in the AFC, don't overthink it. It's Buffalo and it's Baltimore. We'll get to Buffalo in a moment, but the Ravens, it's getting late early. And obviously we're awaiting word on a litany of injuries, but they're 1-3. And if they're without a lot of key pieces, I wonder what you make of what we could see the rest of the way in Baltimore.
I tend to hold on with Lamar. It hasn't looked ideal, but the efficiency has still been high, and they've been able to move the ball, especially given that the run game. You tie back pretty much the Lions and the Bills game, and those two games broke on two fumbles from Derrick Henry. I think those are kind of fluky fumbles, were two excellent plays, in particular the Lions one by a high-effort player in Aiden Hutchinson turning back to the ball, catching up and making a great play. So I'm not as worried as most. That all changes if Lamar Jackson is really injured. I also do have some fears about the defense. Last year we were in a similar position with this defense where they were solidly in the 20s after a tough schedule. They're in a similar spot now. The difference last year is the run defense was impeccable. Their pass defense was really a problem. This season it's kind of flipped, and I think the way that they want to play, there's not really a direction to get better at run defense, given that Roquan Smith is now hurt. Seems that Nnamdi Madubuike is going to be out for the year, which is a massive, massive loss. And it's just going to be a real struggle for that team to play the way they want to play. At the end of the day, though, talking about the Bills as well, the Bills have struggled with issues like this over the past 3 years. If the quarterback is able to produce and the offense can run the ball, they'll be able to control the game state. And I think it's just a matter of Lamar getting right a little bit and getting a little bit healthy, and they should be fine. I'm still sticking with them at the top. I have loved what I've seen with the Chiefs, particularly last week. They're getting Rashee Rice back in 2 weeks. I like what I'm seeing with the Chiefs, and I think you got to consider them in the top tier as well. But I think it's going to be the same old going in the playoffs.
So the Bills at this point, 4-0, that unbelievable opening night game against the Ravens, and then they beat up on three teams that probably aren't very good. And you look at their schedule, Sam. I mean, Patriots, Falcons, Panthers, they get the Chiefs at home. They're at the Dolphins. They get the Bucs at home. They might be favored in every game they play the rest of the way. They get the Eagles at home. So 4-0 with a schedule that isn't all that daunting. Do they need to add something? Do you like where they're at right now? Is it time to just say at this point in the AFC it feels like Buffalo and everybody else?
I would hesitate to say it's Buffalo and everyone else, but I think it may look that way by the end of the season. You talked about their schedule. They're basically the only top-tier team to benefit from such an easy schedule. If you look at the AFC North, the NFC East, and the NFC North, they are all playing each other this year, and that includes, like, depending on how you want to look at it, 3 to 5 of the best teams in the National Football League, including the Ravens, including the Eagles, the Lions, the Packers, the Vikings, so forth and so on. And all those teams have to play each other. Then you go to the AFC West and the NFC West. Both of those divisions look to be pretty competitive. There's really only one division with a premium team in it that is not competitive, and that is the Buffalo Bills in the AFC East. They are we saw this for years with the Patriots, where they kind of just steamrolled the AFC East, and then depending on the schedule, it looked good or bad, but they were able to have good records. I think there's a real chance that this team wins like 14 or 15 games given the schedule. But as you know, January and around the playoffs come, I think there could be some teams like the Ravens, perhaps, if the Steelers are able to work it out, which I'm a little skeptical about. But perhaps the Steelers or one of these other teams are going to roll in with a kind of a dinged-up record, particularly given the early season, but they'll actually be at the same level of strength as the Buffalo Bills. I think that's very possible with teams like the Chargers, teams like the Chiefs, and teams like the Ravens. So when it comes down to it, if you're looking at just regular season bets, I'd lay it all on the Bills at this point. But I don't necessarily think they're in a different tier of team strength just because of the level of schedule that these other teams have to face.
Let's move over to the Chiefs now. As you referenced, they lose their first two. I think people were a little stunned that the Chargers got them, and then they lose to a team that just figures out how to win, and that's the Eagles. They undressed the Giants at home, and then they smoked the Ravens after Baltimore lost a bunch of pieces. I think it's 2 more weeks without Rashee Rice. They get Xavier Worthy back. And 15 is still 15. I don't know that they're the class of the league anymore or the class of the conference anymore, but I certainly will not write them off until they tell us that they're done. So what do you make of the first 4 games, and what do you make of what we could see from Kansas City the rest of the season?
It's kind of starting to look like same old with the core contributors. Chris Jones, we're coming out with like a progress report on the best players in the league according to our proprietary Sumer Score metric. Chris Jones is the top defensive tackle again this year. You look at Trey Smith, one of the best pass blockers, right guard. Trey Smith after signing a big extension. And then Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. He's doing it in a slightly different way. He's been scrambling a lot more this year, but it's good enough to get him in the top 10, top 5 of quarterbacks in terms of efficiency. And that's just what he does year after year. He figures it out. And what I really loved last week, or really the last 2 weeks, is it seems to be a level of urgency to start pushing the ball down the field. And we saw him connect with Xavier Worthy on a big one. I think it's going to look even better with Rashee Rice in. This is really the first time that this skill group has been healthy in 2 to 3 years if Rice is able to come in and contribute. And I think the pieces are kind of falling in the right place, particularly given the defense is performing up to snuff, for the Chiefs to be solidly in that top tier of AFC teams.
The most impressive 4-0 probably belongs to Philly, just based off the competition. Cowboys at home, at KC, Rams at home, Tampa Bay on the road. Now, of course, wide receivers are prima donnas, and if I'm A.J. Brown, I'm probably frustrated. Devontae Smith as well. The talent is there. But look, man, they just win, right? They're 4-0. They're clean, and a lot of conversation out of Philly about whether or not A.J. wants to be there. I know, again, wide receivers want their numbers. They want the shine. They want the money, but I would also imagine they would like to win. So all of the things in Philly, Sam, what are your thoughts?
The offense has practically been Jalen Hurts scrambling and being tush-pushed thus far. The question is, will that maintain? I think we'll probably see the running game come along. I think Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson, who have played but haven't looked fantastic in terms of, the all-pro world beaters that they have been in their careers, I think they've been pretty banged up. I think once you start to get people healthy, the offense is going to look a little bit better in the run game. The pass game has been a problem going back to 2023 when everything exploded. I don't think that we're going to see a repeat of 2023 just because the defense is so much better. You look in particular at the middle of that defense, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, and also Moro Ojomo, who we highlighted early on in the season as a very underrated player. All three of those players are playing incredibly. I wouldn't be shocked if both Davis and Carter are all-pros. Then you go one level behind, Zach Bond having another all-pro level year, joined by the rookie Jihad Campbell, who also has been absolutely fantastic and arguably on the same level as Zach Bond. When you have four players in the middle of your defense operating at that level, it's immensely hard to score. I think they still have one of the best defenses in the league. And I think if it really comes down to it, if they really want to go grit and grind and just chunk out 3 yards at a time, Jalen Hurts design run, Jalen Hurts scramble, shot down the field to A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, they have the talent to do so. And I think that's why they're kind of clearly at the top despite the offensive struggles. That being said, I think they have the biggest weakness of any of these teams because this is a passing league. You got to have a passing offense when it comes down to it. And I think if you cannot do that at a high level and you find yourself in a shootout with someone like the Detroit Lions, you can get in trouble really, really quickly in the playoffs.
As I referenced, Thursday night, SoFi, Rams, Niners, Brock Purdy did not practice today with that turf toe injury. NFC West, though, Niners, Seahawks, Rams, all 3-1. Cardinals 2-2, but it's probably a three-team race. Who do you like in the NFC West?
I like the Los Angeles Rams, and I think they have the biggest arrow up in the league right now. And it's, the same guys contributing. Kyron Williams, who is playing at an all-pro level, very successful running on a play-by-play basis. Puka Nacua, who at this point is having like a Hall of Fame level game every single game. It's something outstanding. Basically, the only thing in his way is his own health and Matthew Stafford's health. But the real change has been the defensive side of the ball. 2 years ago, Les Snead and crew, the general manager of the Los Angeles Rams, did something really interesting. They basically went full youth, full draft picks on the defense. Last year, it looked pretty good with Verse and Fisk. Jared Verse, the defensive end, Braden Fisk, the defensive tackle. It looked pretty good from them, but it was a little shaky everywhere else. We're starting to see the young secondary and linebackers come in and be able to contribute. Cameron Curl has looked good. Quentin Lake at the slot corner position has looked good. Everything on that defense is starting to come together. They're one of the best passing teams in terms of allowing expected points added. They're also getting to the quarterback at a high rate. And if Stafford is able to stay healthy, and frankly, I think even if Stafford isn't able to stay healthy and they put Jimmy Garoppolo in, who at this point has been there for 2 years, I think this team is actually one of the strongest teams in the league. Massive, massive arrow up for them. I think teams are still kind of thinking about them, given that they lost Cooper Kupp and some of the big names, Aaron Donald in recent years. They're still thinking of them as a team, that'll get in the playoffs and maybe make a run. I'd make the argument that they're actually solidly in that tier right now as it stands with the Lions and the Eagles. I think they're a really, really good team that's operating at a really, really high level.
I think there's a lot to like about Green Bay. I think, they start off the season with 2 quality wins. I know Jaden Daniels is dealing with some health issues with the Commanders, but then they go to Cleveland and lose. But did Sunday night, that 40-40 tie, did that change your mind about either Green Bay or Dallas?
The question with regards to Green Bay was always, can the secondary hold up? The expectation was that if Parsons was able to stay healthy and they were able to basically turn him into a game record, that defense would be fine. We saw as soon as he started struggling with his back that Dak was able to turn it on in that game on Sunday. I think that's the real thing that'll hold them back as the season goes on. I think it was a unique circumstance because I think the Cowboys are solidly one of the top 5 offenses in the league. And I think you could make a real case that Dak Prescott has been the MVP of the league up until now if you just go by the strict ruling of the most valuable player. Because Dak Prescott, if he is not on that Cowboys team, it looks solidly different than what it looks like right now. They're sitting there at 1-2-1, but all of those games have been incredibly competitive. And even the Bears game, which looks like a blowout on paper, really changed because he hit George Pickens right in the hands, ball goes up, big pick, and then another pick down the stretch to try to keep the game close. 4th down, try to make something happen, ends up in a pick. Prescott has been incredible. I think when CeeDee Lamb gets healthy, this team is going to look a lot like what the Bengals looked like because George Pickens has also been playing awesome. The run game is getting going behind new offensive coordinator Clayton Adams. We're seeing the Cardinals, where he came from, kind of struggle with the run game. All of that kind of brain power is now being used on the Cowboys running backs, Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. There's a lot to be happy about the Cowboys offense. Not a lot to be happy about with the Cowboys defense. I think they're one of the most fun teams to watch right now. I think they are going to really challenge teams across their schedule, give the Eagles and some of these other teams headaches as the season goes on. I think they're probably going to sit around 500 the entire year. But I think it may have just been kind of a blip on the Packers' radar with regards to their defensive performance, given that Parsons is operating at such a high level and did miss some snaps during the game with back issues.
Our guy Devin Lloyd, former Ute, having a career year in a contract season for Jacksonville. Here's my question, Sam. Are you buying either the Colts or the Jags 3-1 start?
Man, this is a question we asked on the Sumer Sports Show, which will be coming out tomorrow. I asked my colleague Sean Syed, and I tend to agree with what he said. Is I think that you just got to go with the Jags here. The Jags defense has been very turnover reliant. However, I do like the things that they're doing, particularly in their secondary, as a result of having two excellent pass rushers in Travon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen. I also think they kind of have the better quarterback as it stands right now. We saw Daniel Jones kind of slip back into his old self, at least as it pertains to the very beginning of the game, the very end of the game this week, throwing two pretty backbreaking interceptions. And when it comes down to it, I think the Jags team just has better talent and better scheme than the Colts, but the Colts are built through their offense and defensive lines, and that's a sustainable way to build. I lean towards the Jaguars right now.
Tell me what you made of the back and forth between Liam Cohen and Robert Saleh. It's a good thing for Liam that there were people between them because I'm not sure that's a fight that he wants. But when you heard the comments that Saleh made, it almost felt like in a backhanded way he was complimenting them. So kind of unpack this for us, and how common is it for teams to be able to ascertain other teams' plans based off of signs?
I definitely wouldn't want to fight Robert Saleh. That's my number one thing, and I'm like technically bigger than him. I'm like 6'4", 215. So like,
oh wow,
I still wouldn't want to fight him. He looks like a pretty mountainous guy to try to fight. But when it comes down to it, this is what we've seen Liam Cohen be able to do. Whether it's pre-snap, post-play, he can figure out offenses at a high level. He did it all last year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I do think it was probably a compliment from Saleh and a challenge for him to try to overcome, because when you get in those NFL-type environments, you really can't communicate other than with signals, given that, you're playing at someone else's stadium and stuff like that. I think it was truly a compliment. It may have just came out wrong. I do like the fieriness from Liam Cohen. I wouldn't advise that he try to fight Robert Saleh at any point in time. We'll see how that fieriness maintains, especially if the Jaguars start to lose a couple games. I think it's fine for now. Liam Cohen has maintained a level of aggressiveness both on the field and off the field in the press conferences basically since he was hired. I like what I'm seeing. I think that's why I like the Jaguars, and I also like the way that this defense has worked for the 49ers without Nick Bosa as well. I think Saleh's one of the better defensive coordinators in the league. He showed that during his time at the Jets. He showed that the 49ers prior to that. I really don't want to see the outcome of such a fight, but I kind of like what it shows for both coaches. Anything
could happen in Cleveland where we see Shador under center. And maybe it's not, maybe it's a different direction, but they're 1-3, and at some point you got to see what you got with either of these rookies. Do you think we're moving in that direction?
According to CBS Sports, they seem to be moving in a direction of starting Dylan Gabriel against the Vikings, which, Brian Flores is really, really hard to play against. And it's an interesting situation for Gabriel, given that, he's going to go from playing in systems like at Oregon and at Oklahoma and at UCF, which were all pretty much air raid systems where, you're having to examine the entire play and getting it out quick, to seeing a completely different picture from the defense when the huddle breaks, when the ball is snapped, and when you have to go through your reads. Flores is going to put him through the ringer when it comes to mental load on what he's having to do. I'm really interested in what this offense is going to look like. I don't think it's going to look like a classic Stefanski offense with Dylan Gabriel at the helm. I think it's an interesting decision to do it going against the Vikings, who are extremely hot on defense, despite, giving up a couple big plays against the Steelers. They were able to hold for the most of the game. And it'll be interesting to watch. I don't really know what to expect here. I do know that Joe Flacco was clearly at the bottom of the league in most of our analytics, and I think that's why the move is being made, especially given that if Lamar Jackson is out, the AFC North may be a little bit more up in the air, and their defense is operating at a level that is extremely well. I mean, Myles Garrett is having an unprecedented year in both run stuffing and pass rushing. We're seeing guys like Malik Collins, who comes from the 49ers, having a good year. Mason Graham, the rookie, doing well. Carson Schlesinger, another rookie, also doing well at the linebacker position. There's a lot to like on the defensive side of the ball. I think they just need to shake up on the offensive side of the ball. But I don't really know what to expect other than to know that rookie quarterbacks typically are not super great when they come in midseason.
Before I say you lose, Sam, I'm going to ask you about two more 3-1 teams, and you already kind of alluded to the fact that you're not necessarily buying what Pittsburgh is doing. And Mike Tomlin's Mike Tomlin. They win regular season games, and maybe there's a natural ceiling there, and Aaron's not asked to do much, but he's done enough for them to start out 3-1. And then on the other side, maybe it's time to just say out loud that Jim Harbaugh might be the best football coach at any level with the Chargers 3-1 start. But it's interesting to consider both the Steelers at 3-1 out of the AFC North with potentially a compromised Ravens team, and the Chargers at 3-1 with a Chiefs team that you and I still believe is good, but maybe not what they used to be. Are you buying either of these teams as legitimate contenders to win either division?
If I had to pick between the two, I'm going with Justin Herbert and the Chargers. I think that it really sucks that they're losing two premium top 10 probably at their position players in Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater at the tackle position. But we've seen Justin Herbert be able to produce with virtually anything around him. It's just a shame that I don't think this team is going to be the top 5 offense that we saw in the first 3 weeks anymore, just because they don't have the horses anymore. I will say it is great to see Quentin Johnston be able to kind of take his game to another level. I think Ladd is fine and going to end up playing well. And Keenan Allen was kind of exactly what the doctor ordered, ironically, after they let him go last year. They have a good 3-level passing game. I think that's going to maintain. I am a little worried about the pressure that we'll see, and I think the way that I wouldn't believe in Herbert is if he starts getting banged up and unable to do some of the cool stuff that we saw kind of for the first time with him fully healthy early season. I think their defense is still excellent. Derwin James is an all-pro. They have guys all over the field that can make plays. The Steelers are interesting because I can't really lean on them to make, analytically data-based decisions. Some strange fourth downs that Greg Olsen was really highlighting on the NFL Network broadcast last week. But when it comes down to it, it's great when you have T.J. Watt on your team, and it's great when you have a pretty good offense coordinator in Arthur Smith who can figure out how to get guys the ball in their hands. A big question for me preseason was whether this was going to be the Aaron Rodgers offense, shotgun, quick throws, and stuff like that, or whether it was going to be more under center play action. It's kind of been a mix. It has been a lot of under center play action, but the ball's still coming out pretty quick. I think that as a result, I kind of think that they could be a little bit smoke and mirrors. A weird win forcing Carson Wentz to basically take 7 sacks, 2 picks. In like 6 or 7 throwaways. There was a bunch of weird stuff that happened there. I'm still skeptical of the Steelers, but Mike Tomlin wins games, as he said. And I don't know what kind of voodoo or magic that he has, but he clearly can get a team to buy into what he's selling, and that leads to wins. I think as a result, we're going to see another right around 500 season from the Steelers, and I think the Chargers should solidly win 10 games regardless of the 2 tackles being down.
Good stuff, Sam. Where can people go find your work?
Yeah, go check us out on SumerSports.com. There's all kinds of new data that updates every single morning. So right after, the game's in on Sunday night, you can go check all that out. A lot of great fantasy insights, a lot of great betting insights. SumerSports.com is where you can find us.
Thank you, my friend. Have a good week, and we'll chat soon, okay?
My pleasure.
Sam Bruckhouse, Sumer Sports. I want to tell you about my friends at IFA Country Stores. With IFA's Step 4 fall and winter lawn food, you'll get stronger roots now and an early green up next spring. It's the ultimate lawn owner power move. We will catch a break. Going to bring in Andy Larson coming up to talk some jazz. Dave Fox live in studio. I'll be on TV with Dave tonight at 10:35. We call it 5 Questions with Spence. So a lot to do the rest of the way on a Tuesday drive on a rainy day. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. About 15 minutes away from first pitch in the Bronx. Not too often we get a Yankees-Red Sox postseason battle, wild card style, best of three. But that's what we've got starting in about 15 minutes from right now as the Major League Baseball wild card round began this morning. Love fall baseball, man. It's full of intensity and passion, certainly in a way that the regular season oftentimes lacks because you play 162 games. The Cubs were down early. They scored a couple, I believe, in the seventh, so they took care of the Padres at Wrigley 3-1. Tigers beat the Guardians earlier today in Detroit. No, actually, that was in Cleveland, excuse me. So the Tigers lead 1-0. The Cubbies lead 1-0. Your late night tilt will be the Reds and the Dodgers. And like I said, we are 15 minutes away from first pitch in the Bronx, where the Yankees and the Red Sox will do battle game one of the wild card. Going to bring in Andy Larson today, live in studio, actually. Andy was at Jazz Media Day. 5 hours of sound yesterday coming out of the Utah Jazz, players, coaches, front office, ownership, trying to spin what is going to be a very long, frustrating season, once again, for Jazz fans. But we'll get some of Andy's takeaway. We will bring in Dave Fox today, live in studio. I'll be on TV with Dave tonight at 10:35 on KMYU. We call that 5 Questions with Spence. So stay tuned for that. Fun conversation with Sam Brockhouse, where we broke down week 4 of the pro football season, which ended last night with a Monday Night Football doubleheader. Tyreek Hill did have surgery today. He is out the rest of the season and is looking to rehab and potentially play next year. Brock Purdy did not practice today. They have a short week, the Niners do, as they're at SoFi for Thursday Night Football to take on the Rams. Don't forget, you can hear that game on our radio station. Porter, I'm trying to think about this. You are your sports teams, bro. You are a Cowboys fan. You are a Mets fan. You are a Knicks fan.
There you go.
Is there a rival? Like, I am very excited to watch Yankees Red Sox as a lifelong Yankee fan. And I sports hate the Red Sox. You shouldn't bring real life hate in your sports fandom. I sports hate the Red Sox. This is in doing this job for 20 years now, the fan in you kind of dies. You kind of have to be someone who's more impartial. You have to be a little bit agnostic with your cheering. But whenever Yankees Sox takes place, there's an extra, little juice that's inside of me. Is there a rival with your baseball team, your basketball team, your football team, where regardless of the stakes, and obviously there are stakes today, you just get used to watch the game?
That's a good question. Not as much anymore. I would say in this, you could even argue this is even a rivalry, but I used to say the Celtics because I grew up a Knicks fan in the 2000s, right, with a bunch of really good battles, both the late ones that you're familiar with, but as well the Melo era Knicks that had some really fun battles with the Celtics. As a Cowboys fan, it's usually the Eagles. Just that's usually the best team in the division outside of the Cowboys. Washington and the Giants have been not great consistently for a long time. Obviously, the Giants have a few Super Bowls in there. So, not really. I'm obviously, as a Hokie fan, I really, really enjoy that they beat Virginia every year. Regardless, it seems like even if Virginia's good and the Hokies are bad, we'll win that game. So that one always gets me a little bit juiced. But like you, I think I've tried to let the hate die as far as the sports goes. But man, I used to love and really, really get into Knicks versus the Celtics that had Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett. Both those series went one of which ways several different times. So that was fun.
Yeah, sports hate is the term. Leave the real life hate, out of it, because when you bring real life hate into it, we have fans behaving badly, and apparently that spills over to golf.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was usually reserved for English soccer fans, college football fans in general. That's why every Monday after the NFL season, we get 10 videos of somebody smashing somebody's head in.
I kind of got a bone to pick with the golf etiquette thing.
You really?
First off,
let's hear about it. I want to hear all the golf takes from you on this Tuesday.
First off, I do I like and wish that there was a little more of a waste management open atmosphere at more golfing events.
Okay.
I will also say a lot of the guys who have this like golfing etiquette, they have this necessity to talk about golfing etiquette and to get really into it. I've been on the golf course with a lot of those guys and heard some of the stuff that they talk about and say, and the betting that goes on. It's not always this like, even though it's on a country club, it's not always perfect,
not at all.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a little uppityness to it that I don't like.
Well, and also,
as you know, it's golf.
Well, no, and look, there is such a thing, I believe, as the way to properly act as a fan, and I don't think you should take personal shots at players or coaches. But for Rory McIlroy to be yelling F-bombs at the fans and then covering Bryson DeChambeau's name with his flag and then dropping F-bombs in the press conference, and, oh, by the way, for the past 2 years, egging people on,
yeah,
and then crying foul, that's a little.
This is kind of where I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Like Rory Mac.
Yeah.
When the cameras are off, a lot of times, and sometimes when they're on, the Rory McIlroys of the world are not like these perfect choir boys, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, some of them are. I can't use terms on the radio, like the opposite of that. So it's just funny to me that golf always seems to have this. Tennis the same way. There's this etiquette that people follow. I just wish that would play every which way, right?
Yeah, and there's some hypocrisy involved with the McIlroy stuff, and like the European team as a whole. Like, congrats! Now you all get to fly home to Florida and celebrate your Ryder. Like, you live here, okay? So calm down a little bit. Like, if you really had that much pride in your country,
okay,
maybe you would live there.
Here's a hot take.
What do you got?
People from Britain shouldn't be allowed in the country, let alone golfing in the country.
Okay, calm down. That'll do. We're not going to discuss the borders on the program today. But no, I do believe there's such a thing as fan etiquette.
Too far?
I do feel like the golf fans at Bethpage probably passed it. But you can't egg it on for 2 years and then hide behind the whole, like, please don't say mean things to me. Who's that no-talent clown that was on SN? Oh, Pete Davidson. It's like
you hate Pete Davidson.
Well, no, Pete Davidson, he also does stand-up comedy, and during his stand-up, he takes shots at everybody.
Right.
And then as soon as it's turned around, he's like, I have mental health issues. You can't make fun of me. It's like, dude, that's not how this works.
Right.
You can't take shots at people and then hide behind this cloak.
We saw Rory grab a fan's phone and chuck it earlier this year, right?
Yeah.
Was that a thing? Like, now, let's be clear. I'm not saying that the fans should be throwing things at players that I think
sure.
I saw on camera.
For sure. No, there is such a thing as fan etiquette. And like I said, there's the term is sports hate. So to bring it back around, I sports hate the Red Sox. And when it comes to Yankee Sox, the way I feel right now is the way Ute or BYU fans feel leading up to Utah BYU football. I'm excited to watch this. First pitch in the Bronx is just about 6 minutes away. All right, we're going to bring in Andy Larson live in studio today. We'll do some Jazz Media Day, maybe a little RSL. Andy's also been doing some football coverage for our friends at the Salt Lake Tribune. But I want to tell you about a new client on the show and a really cool opportunity if you're a Utah fan with America First Credit Union. You can support your team with the official Utah Athletics Visa debit card, which is free, with America First checking options. As the official credit union of Utah Athletics, America First can offer our members the exclusive Visa debit card, along with all the perks that come with it. Check this out, okay? Exclusive cardholder benefits include special ticket offers. As an America First member, you can score exclusive tickets and prices to Utah sporting events, including football, on Ticketmaster.com. This is the one I love. Early game day entry. So you beat the crowd and get into Rice-Eccles Stadium up to 2 hours prior to kickoff, 30 minutes sooner than the general public. Simply show a valid ID and your America First Visa debit card to the security officers at Gate L in the southeast corner. Our friends at America First Credit Union, the official credit union of U Athletics. Andy Larson, live in studio, coming up after a quick break right here on ESPN 700. Rainy, chilly Tuesday afternoon here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, as we are preparing to turn our calendars to October tomorrow. It's the final day of September. Going to bring in Dave Fox later on. I'll be on TV with Dave tonight at 10:35, KMYU. We call that 5 Questions with Spence. Voice of the Utes, Bill Riley stops by in the 5 o'clock hour. We'll say goodnight at 6. Live in studio, Andy Larson, Salt Lake Tribune on a Tuesday. How lucky are we? What's up, dude? How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to see you. We'll get to some Jazz Media Day sound, 5 hours of sound and actual topics and storylines, which is always nice. Want to kick the tires on some RSL. There's only 3 matches left, one at home. The Crapids, the hated Crapids in town. But we were just having a conversation about fan etiquette because Yankees Sox about to start. Oh, Porter, by the way, would you turn that to the game? All due respect to our friends at ABC News. I do not want to watch the news.
I'm dialed in on this.
Attaboy. Well, keep me up to date on anything that's going on college campuses.
Where's Dana?
Because that's all I want to know. But Yankees, Red Sox, I'm a Yankees fan. And over the years, I've kind of developed more of a gentle approach to my sports watching. I call it sports hate. I don't like to bring, sports hate into real life. RSL has had some things recently with some fan interactions that have been not great. The Ryder Cup was laced with fans at Bethpage saying some really nasty things to the European golfers. But you referenced an announcement that was made by our friends at the Delta Center. Unpack it for us.
Yeah, they let us know today that they were banning all signs at Delta Center events.
All signs, period.
That's Jazz games, Mammoth games, concerts, unless the concert, if the artist specifically asks to allow signs, then they will allow it. But the default will be no signs of any kind. And, in years past, it had been, hey, we're going to limit the size of the signs to be, kind of in your seat space or so on. Now it's just no signs whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how you feel about this. I wanted to ask, for me, I hate that. I remember, the NBA Finals games and what the Delta Center was.
Yeah.
And fans were bringing signs and, were, supporting the Jazz through them. And, there was always be, a sign, segment of the broadcast. And I thought it was kind of a cool way for to have atmosphere, right? Mm-hmm. And so maybe that makes me an old man of me wanting the times to be at the Delta Center what they used to be when I was growing up. It's not like I ever brought a sign to the game, but I think a little bit of atmosphere is missing because it just feels like more and more each year the Delta Center gets more and more bland and corporate and just Ryan Smithy.
Trucks and Teslas.
Yeah, and it's just I like it when there is something that they're not in control of, and there is something for fans to show their appreciation for a team or players.
No, I agree with you. The Jazz games you go to, it feels like you're at an MLM event in Utah County where flat brim hats and joggers and sneakers and Teslas and trucks so I would imagine, Andy, this is in response to what I perceive to be a very heightened, passionate time for several different levels, whether it's political, whether it's religious, whether it's straight violence. And I think banning all signs is an overreaction. There's probably a middle ground to be found here. They probably just want to avoid what RSL found themselves dealing with some of the political statements made by people in this. That would be my guess. But I agree with you. Banning every single sign seems to be a little bit of an overreaction.
Yeah, again, I just kind of want the atmosphere to be as loud and as proud and as boisterous and as difficult for the opponents as it can be. Yep. And obviously, sure, there's a line there to cross with that shouldn't be crossed with regards to racism and what happened down in Colorado with the BYU Colorado game and Colorado getting fined $50,000 today by the Big 12. That's all that crosses the line to me. But there's still so much room for fans to be fans and loud and passionate and fans. I mean, how I am at RSL games. Mm-hmm. I'm as loud and as boisterous as it comes because I want to add to the atmosphere because I want RSL to win. Yeah. And I think if we just make Jazz games available for the middle and upper class who, again, are going from Utah County or wherever you are, it makes it sterile.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think a good, clever sign adds to the atmosphere. Whether, when the Knicks were good in the 90s, there was one guy who had really, really good seats, and he made signs that had one reductive statement, about the game. And it was simple. It was do or die, game 7, this is it. I mean, it wasn't anything over the top, but he would stand there in silence, like holding a sign up, and we all wanted to see what this one sentence said. I can remember the good doctor, may he rest in peace, with the chicken and the sign. So
they banned him from the chicken, right? That sucks.
It does feel like there is a attitude of trying to control things over there in a way that feels a little bit overboard with the Jazz. I don't know if that's a reflection of our current political climate, but it does feel like ever since the ownership change, they're just trying to control a lot that the Millers didn't necessarily care to control. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and it's funny to think like what the Millers would have done differently, right? Like, and I don't know that we know that for sure, but yeah, I do think that is the feeling, and obviously part of it is that the Jazz are just terrible as well, and so the atmosphere for Jazz games isn't what it was what it once was, in part because of that. Yeah. But I still think Jazz fans are awesome, and it's incredible that they sold out last year despite winning 17 games, right? Like, Jazz fans are still awesome. Mm-hmm. It's just, you can go back and watch those games on YouTube. And I'm not just talking about 1997. I'm talking about 2019, right? Sure, and it does feel a little bit different. And I worry a little bit about the renovations. I got the chance to tour the Delta Center today. I think they're trying to do good things there, but it's, what's the upside? In the end, there are going to be more suites than before. Yeah. Making sports accessible for real fans, I think, is really important to me.
Yeah, and look, this is an interesting conversation because I'm a grown up. I know that this is a front facing, revenue generating business, but there's got to be a line. Like you just signed a $72 billion TV deal. Like, all of your decisions cannot be steeped in revenue. Even though I'm a grown-up and I understand that this is how it works, there has to be some sort of line where you say, okay, the P&L statements are good. Like, we are fine economically, so let's make this a little bit more of a fan-friendly experience. There's got to be a line. And
I think, they did that to some extent with the TV deal, right? Like, I think there are times when the Smiths have done that. I think there are times when the Millers did that, but I go back, like, thinking you were just talking about the U.S. and Europe and the Ryder Cup, but, like, in Europe, the fans actually band together and, like, go on strike if there's a change that is made to, a supporter section or the Super League stuff with the Premier League and everything else. Like, and we don't have that kind of, like, I guess, fan ambition to kind of group together and unionize, to use probably the wrong word, to kind of make things better for the regular fan. And instead, so we're just seeing kind of more and more corporate as things go along.
Porter, I'm going to plead with you one more time. I do not need the weather update in Logan. I need the Yankees-Red Sox game on television. Thank you, my friend. It's a really interesting dynamic because, Andy, occasionally people in the NBA will say the quiet part out loud, right? Kevin Durant a couple years ago on social, you guys don't get it. We never talk about you. Nobody cares about the fan. Jason Kidd, after the Mavs were eliminated in the playoffs a couple years ago, saying, you guys don't get it. We are millionaires cheering for each other. And you hear things like that, and you're just like, dude, I know, but don't say that. So the sad reality is, these people on the other side of the line, whether it's owners or coaches or players, they exist in this ecosystem where really all they care about is each other. They're kind of in this group, and the people that consume or cover the sport, they're not really considered by the majority of them. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, for example, in the Jazz locker room, right? And I don't think this is a Jazz problem. I think this is a league-wide and, heck, just, I think, professional sports-wide problem. But, like, I guarantee you the Jazz fans were more upset about the Jazz losing than the Jazz players were last year. Yeah. And maybe some of that's because, and I think a lot of it is because, hey, the Jazz kind of went out there and tried their hardest and just got killed because they're not as good, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and you just have to have some sort of acceptance of that when you're actually playing. But Jazz fans, they are living and dying with the team and giving their all and listening to sports radio like this, right? Like, they're spending their hours in passion of this product that I don't know that, the people actually involved in getting paid for it care about as much. And, I'll give Ryan Smith a lot of credit. I think he is actually extremely well-intentioned, and I think he does care a lot more than most sports owners do. I think he is extremely involved in the Jazz in a way that 28 other owners can't say the same, that they are. But I do think like that is a significant problem in sports. It's just like the difference in passion between fan and the millionaires and billionaires is palpable.
What do you think Ryan Smith, the 21-year-old Jazz fan, would say about Ryan Smith, the owner of the Utah Jazz?
I mean, how much of a fan do we think Ryan Smith really was when he was 21?
I mean, by his the way he has expressed it, it sounds like he was a massive Jazz fan. Did I know Ryan at 21? I did not. I'm just going off of what he has said. But he also said that they've taken 2 years to tear it down and they're building it back up. He also said he didn't talk to Danny Ainge about hiring Austin. So he said plenty of things that I believe are patently false. But he's also said growing up he was a passionate Jazz fan. I don't know if
he also said growing up he played hockey in the street. Like I think Ryan cared about the Jazz to some degree, but he wasn't a season ticket holder. He wasn't. I don't think he was a sicko. Like I think it was one of the things on his radar.
Okay. So let's operate off the premise that this thing that he said is actually true compared to the other things that are not. Sure. And let's say he was a passionate Jazz. What would Ryan Smith, the hypothetical passionate Jazz fan, say about Ryan Smith, the owner of the Jazz?
Look, I think there's a lot of stuff that that fans really appreciate him for. Like bringing the Mammoth here is not a small thing, right?
100%.
And to have the ambition to do that, the Millers never had that. And it shows because we didn't have an NHL team until Ryan Smith showed, right? Like the TV deal, I think, is pretty fan first and fan friendly. Like that's awesome. No Jazz fan does what they did to the uniforms, right? I mean, let's be honest. That was
thank goodness those are gone.
That was
crazy.
Oh my
Gosh.
I think there are arena changes that are going to be made and have been made that are in pursuit of the corporate dollar, not the average fan dollar, right? And where Ryan fit in that growing up is of debate, but I don't think fit me as an average fan, for example. But like overall, you look around the league and there are a lot of bad owners who care less than Ryan. Like I do think it's like
That's
kind
fair.
of an overall issue, and I don't want to attack Ryan too much. Like the Miller's new ballpark down in Daybreak. All of the seats closest to home plate are suites. You can't buy them as a regular fan, right? Like, at least to some extent, you can still buy, well, if you're willing to spend enough money to do that at the Delta Center without owning a corporation, right? Like, so I think this is just like, part of it is that it is just a trend. I am, to some degree, Ryan has bucked this. The fan-friendly pricing, I think, is good. There's a lot of ways in which I think the bean counters at SEG and PR and everything else have kind of made it more difficult for the average fan, and that's that's sports wide. It would be unfair just to say that that's just Ryan.
Yeah, and I'm certainly not making this an attack on Ryan at all. Every time I've spoken to Ryan, he's been very decent to me, and I don't have a bone to pick with him. And I don't know how much of this is Ryan making. I don't know if this is a monolith. Part of me believes it kind of is, based off of people who I know who worked there and decided to leave based off of a couple of meetings with him, namely front office and coaching, coaching staffs. I have somewhat of an idea of the way he approaches things. But ultimately, the only thing we can analyze are results. And the results, we're entering year 4 of what I perceive to be a very clunky rebuild, as I've talked about. And it is entirely insulting for them to send the narrative that they took 2 to 3 years to break it down in order to build it back up. Like, that is as insulting as him sitting behind a microphone and saying he didn't talk to Danny about hiring Austin. Like, so I am not trying to, this is not a personal thing. But when you cover a team, you can only cover results. And I just think it's fair to say that so far the results have been left wanting.
Yeah, I mean, if you told fans in 2021 that you're trading Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, and 4 years later you are won 17 games the last year and are projected to win 18 this year, your Vegas over-under, that's a failure. But I think we've seen the results of that failure, and that, frankly, they passed up Justin Zanuck for the GM job, right? And that they are hiring Austin Ainge. Now, I do think Danny Ainge deserves a decent amount of criticism for how this rebuild has gone, and we'll see. I mean, it really, so much of it depends on if they get lucky in a few different ways. With if Ace Bailey becomes good or not, if they get a good draft pick in this year's draft, if it's a top 3 guy, because that's the There are 3 legitimate franchise-changing players. And then if those guys become good, right? Like they may be franchise-changing prospects. Are they franchise-changing actual NBA talents? And we just don't know that yet. But so much of that has to go right. And then we're still talking being 3 years out at best, right? Like,
at best, Andy.
Yeah.
At best. When you look at the landscape of the West, 3 years out at best. And by at best, I mean maybe competing for the 8th spot in 3 years. At best.
Yeah, I mean, if you're probably looking at like AG DeBonta's sophomore year, right? Like,
oh man, it would be
is
so
your best
nice.
case scenario, and then you're fighting for the 8th spot.
So the Danny thing is interesting, and you're not wrong, but I'll present it like this. I don't know how juiced Danny was about taking this opportunity, and I feel like he made it clear to Ryan, where it's kind of like, look, man, I got my tea time at Riverside. And look, I'm at games, and you're at a lot of media. Danny's there.
Yeah.
He's at practice. He's at games. But I don't think, like, Danny as a player, Danny as a coach, Danny as a young executive was a pit bull. And I think you're getting the dog as he's aged a little bit here. I don't know that he had the same juice. And so that's not me giving Danny an out, because Danny knows the deal. Like, you make draft picks, and then a couple years later, we have questions about pretty much all of them. I think there's a lot to like about Kyle. You kind of pointed out Filipowski very early to me, and I think so far you've been shown to be right. But I'll say this. I like Austin's approach so far. I think Austin has hit the ground running. I think he decided, like, look, we're not going to hold out for anything positive with Sexton or Clarkson. We're moving on from John Collins. Like, we have to start this thing over and break it down a little bit in a way that his dad just didn't, which I kind of like.
Yeah, I agreed, and I think that's kind of an interesting dynamic you mentioned. I wonder if, to me, it's less that, like, Danny is washed, which is kind of what you're presenting, right? You didn't use those words.
Not as engaged as maybe he was when he built championship teams in Boston, I guess is what I'd say.
I don't know if, like, Pitbull Danny does anything differently than current Danny. I think, like, to me, the issue was that maybe that approach doesn't work in this NBA anymore.
Okay.
Where, famously, he was trying to win every trade. And the Jazz were not in a position where they had pieces that allow them to win any trades, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, yes, you won the trade to acquire John Collins. You got rid of Rudy Gay and you got John Collins. Of course you do that every day of the week. Sure. You won the trade. Congratulations. And then what? Right? Like, that's a pitbull mentality, but it's not with any cohesiveness with the actual plan, with where you are in the timeline of the rebuild. And so that's why that was such a mistake. I think you can make the same argument for extending Colin Sexton. Hey, that's a good deal-ish in a vacuum, but, like, in the end, didn't make sense for the timeline of the program. And so, anyway, you just run into these kind of circumstances where, because something was a good deal in a vacuum or made sense for them to win the press conference, the value of the trade, meant that they were losing in the long run. And as a result, you drafted Cody Williams and you drafted Taylor Hendricks, and you ended up with non-top 5 guys that maybe would have made a difference.
So let's move over into some takeaways from Jazz Media Day as training camp began today. The number one storyline, and our friend Sarah Todd asked the question, and look, I'll unpack this, then give you the space. I don't know that I've ever fully believed that Dennis Lindsey's decision to not extend Gordon Hayward motivated him to leave. I don't know that I've ever been on that page. I simply believe Gordon wanted to go play for his college coach and wanted a bigger market and wanted to sit at a different lunch table. But there are more than a few people that believed when Dennis decided to not extend Gordon off his rookie deal, that set some wheels in motion where he decided to leave.
Yeah.
I want to be clear. I don't know that that's true. So the Jazz have elected to take the same approach with Walker Kessler. ESPN comes out every year with their NBA player rank. They rank the top 100 players in the league. The Jazz have 2. One is Lowry and the other is Walker. I think it's safe to say Walker's good. And he's 24, and he'll continue, if he puts in the work under Will, to get better. But Walker was very honest and very salient yesterday about his frustrations. So what do you make of this dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like clearly there's a monetary reason for the Jazz not to extend Walker, right? Like, they just get more cap space next year, and then maybe you can do something with it. Maybe you get an extra first-round pick for taking on a salary. Maybe you sign even a good young player. Who knows? Likewise, Walker has every reason in the world to be frustrating. I cannot imagine a more frustrating situation for a player than you are Walker Kessler. You are the only good player defensively on the worst defense in the league. You have, you started your career as a extremely promising rookie who was getting lobs from Mike Conley and like doing all the right things and really actually competitive for the first half of your year. And then Danny Ainge trades away your good role players, not only in year 1, but in year 2 and in year 3 of your career. And now you're going into the year and you're starting over. Meanwhile, the team that is most interested in your services is the Los Angeles Lakers, which has Luka Doncic and LeBron James, and maybe the single best situation for a rim running center in NBA history, right? Like, is an incredible situation for someone like Walker Kessler and their fans. He's, getting DMs. You know how crazy Laker fans are, getting DMs on Instagram and Twitter, and he knows, that is the alternative. Is I could be winning games with two of the greatest players to ever play the game who want nothing more than to assist me in lobs, or I can be playing with Keontae George and win 18 games next year.
Yeah.
At least if you're going to make me do option B, pay me my money.
Yeah, it's fair.
And yet, Austin Ainge can't worry about that much what Walker thinks, because in the end, like, yes, Walker's a good player, and he's also not a franchise guy. Like, he's not even at the level of a Gordon Hayward, probably, right? Like, he is. It's unlikely to me he probably becomes an all-star, right? Like, he's a nice piece to have. He's the only piece the Jazz have. But I think everyone is doing their job here in kind of the right way and being honest with what their interests are. But it just sucks, right? Like, and I think I do think there's a real chance that the Jazz trade him. But I think it would have to be a lot. I don't think they necessarily want to, but they're at the point of this timeline where even guys like Walker Kessler, you're way less excited about paying him $28 million a year for the next 4 years to play for a up-and-coming team.
Yeah, and he plays a position and plays it in a way that I still think has benefit, but is a little bit antiquated in today's NBA. I mean, I loved Rudy. I loved that 9-year run under Quinn. But if you're going to pay a non-offensive big 30 to 35% of your cap, you're probably in a tough spot. So you bring up a good point. Even though he's good, he does play a position and plays the position in a way that Jokic doesn't, and that's not fair. But you get my point. Like, the way Walker plays the position, is there a place for it? Probably. Is that a franchise-changing piece? Probably not, just because of the way he plays center.
And he's just not that good, right? Like, if he had a mid-range hook, if he had various different elements, or if he was more switchable defensively, then yeah. And I do think Will and Danny, while they'll never say this publicly, would prefer probably a more versatile center, and this is kind of what they got.
Yeah.
But or at least have the option, and then it's easier to have the option if you're not paying one of those guys $28 million a year or whatever.
So I listened to the same Zach Lowe pod you did, and I learned that because of a question you asked Austin, which was a good question. Zach is of the opinion that Lowry will be traded. And he said something along the lines of he doesn't think he's going to be on the Jazz roster by the end of the year. I agree with Austin that Lowry's awesome. I mean, I don't know how you can come to any other conclusion. He's also 28, will be 29, which isn't old, but that's, ironically enough, the end of your prime in NBA basketball, which is weird because I feel like we were watching Lowry at Arizona yesterday. Austin gave the answer you would expect him to give. Do you believe Lowry Markkanen will be on the Jazz roster at the end of the season?
I don't. I think he's traded in the next 2 windows.
Okay.
So either at the deadline or next summer.
Okay.
It just, for those reasons, it doesn't make sense. Because we talked about the Jazz timeline, right? You're talking, again, AJ DeBonce's second year. You're talking 3 years out. Lowry's 31, 32 at that point. And then, again, do you want to pay him, or do you want to see what else you can get value-wise from other teams? Now, I think in this last offseason, what the Jazz learned was those offers weren't there. Other teams weren't offering anything that was kind of more interesting, that would change kind of the long-term value of the franchise. And so, sure, like, keep Lowry put and see if the value goes up. And, I think with a good Eurobasket, probably did. If he has a good start to the season, it probably does. But then, you're hoping for the right situation to happen. I don't think, as we saw last year, the Jazz can still lose a lot of games with Lowry on the roster. Mm-hmm. I could see that happening again. And so I think ultimately they do have some time here to wait for the right trade, not in like the John Collins and Colin Sexton way where you're completely out of luck, but Lowry is better than those guys clearly and fits in enough situations around the league that there should be a larger trade market for him than there is for a John Collins who has defensive weaknesses, or Colin Sexton who's too small and just a scoring guard, et cetera.
Well, and if this rebuild is just starting, and if the Jazz timeline kind of does start with Ace and Walter and some of the younger pieces, then Lowry's value could actually expedite that process. Now, I hate that we're starting 4 years too late, but as the old saying goes, better late than never. So if this Austin gets hired and this is now his show and he's decided that he is starting now, even though we've all been waiting for them to start for 3-4 years, Lowry could bring back a package that can really help expedite that process. I think you have to look at it very seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what those picks are really matters. What the protections on those picks are really matters. If you can get a good young player really matters, and ideally to me, one that isn't kind of in a long-term extension already. So one option is San Antonio Spurs and Devin Vassell, right? That's been a rumor that's been around. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's been mentioned.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. But that guy also is being paid $25 to $30 million for the next 4 years, right? So does that work with your timeline? Better than Lowry, probably. But anyway, I think having interesting conversations about what you can actually get back for Lowry that's more than just a first-round pick is important.
I've always loved listening to Will when Will's in the mood to share and teach, because you learn, and I do think he's dynamic. I think he's a good communicator. Part of me wonders where his head is at as a coach. You are analyzed by your win-loss record. You just are, and he's won about 30% of his games. Among the things he said is every player at some point along the line has a breakout season. Most likely candidate for that breakout season for the Jazz this year is who and why?
To me, either Kyle Filipowski or Bryce Sensabaugh, right?
Okay.
Those are the two guys who excelled in Jazz Summer League this year. And Bryce, for the first time, will have a role on the team that should be relatively stable so long as he's anywhere near good. We'll be playing minutes over Johnny Juzang. I think Kyle Filipowski also, was MVP of the Summer League, right? Played extremely well. Gives the Jazz a lot of things that they don't have anywhere else on the roster. I think playing him as much as possible makes sense. So I could see either of those two guys. I've been really impressed with what Taylor Hendricks looks like and says, so maybe there's a possibility there. I just think coming back from the injury is going to be tough. Everyone's saying really good things about Keontae. I'll kind of believe it when I see it, just because of the archetype of player.
Yep.
Just scoring guards aren't valuable in today's NBA in the way that they used to be.
All right, we'll finish with RSL, but before we get there, starting five opening night. Give me your best guess.
I think you're still going Isaiah, Ace. I'm going to forget somebody in this, and it's going to be embarrassing. But Lowry,
Filipowski,
Walker, and then, either Taylor or Kyle.
Man, I feel like probably Kyle. That's a big lineup.
Yeah, it's a really big lineup.
So you're saying Ace at 2.
You could move Bryce to the 3 and go or Ace at 3, Bryce is 2, or you could have Keontae start at the 2. I mean, there are a lot of different actual possibilities here.
If they go Isaiah, Ace, Filipowski, Lowry, Walker, that's not enough shooting to be even kind of good.
No, I mean, well, you've got Lowry and Kyle and Ace who can shoot.
You think Ace has NBA 3 right away?
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's good to hear. I'm excited to watch him. All right, final thing. Big 3 points over the weekend for the lads. A compromised Austin team as they're playing in the Open Cup final tomorrow. Nonetheless, we need it, so we'll take it. Rapids in town on Saturday, Rocky Mountain Cup. 7 isn't a possibility, I don't think. Maybe you can get up to 8 to host the playing game. Just your latest thoughts on where we're at with RSL.
Yeah, I thought they played well in Austin and against Austin, and it was a fun game on Saturday. This next one is the big one. This is everything, not only just for Rocky Mountain Cup bragging rights, but also making that you really have to win this in order to have a realistic shot at making the playoffs,
yep.
right? And so I think the roster can do it. I think Colorado's beatable. This is not LAFC, and we've talked about it all season. It's pretty clear RSL is in this middle pack of teams from 6 to 14 in the West that could all end up in this spot. It's just who ends up winning these kind of matches. And so I'm hopeful for some reason. I don't know why.
That's good.
I shouldn't be, but I'm I hope for good things.
That's good, Andy. Well,
Positive vibes only.
I love it.
I mean, that's how the only way to approach it, right?
No, I love it. It's just we've all been injured by this little soccer team, so I enjoyed me some fall soccer. Great to see you, my friend. Okay,
You too.
All right, the great Andy Larson from the Salt Lake Tribune. We're going to bring in Ryan from the Dish Pros in a moment. Before we catch a break, I got to tell you about my friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks, best way to win cash on the Broncos, on the Niners, on the Raiders this football season. Which players are going off, which ones are overhyped. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your takes into cash all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the only app that offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. If you want to pick more on Josh Allen's pass yards, rush yards, or touchdowns, now you can pick all of them in the same lineup only on Prize Picks. You can follow other Prize Picks players directly on the app and copy their lineups in just one click. Whether it's a friend, a celebrity partner, or just someone whose picks you like, hit the follow button and check out every lineup they create in the new feed tab on Prize Picks. Step number 1, download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play that first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it is good to be right. We'll catch a break and bring in Dave Fox live in studio. Yanks Sox 0-0, bottom of the second in the Bronx. Keep it here on ESPN 700. 21 Pilots, David. David Fox live in studio, who every week brings us a song that is his desperate plea to stay young.
Does this song bring back memories?
Yeah, it does. As a matter of fact, thanks for bringing it up. Are you a 21 Pilots fan?
No, I just like this song.
Okay. All right. Well, hello, David. How are you?
Good. How are you? How was London?
It was excellent. I very much love that city. However, couple of differences between London and cities in the United States, namely
the accent.
Thanks, Dave. Namely, taxis have the right of way, not pedestrians. So, and there's also roundabouts. So you have to look.
They're everywhere.
You have to look like 7 directions. And if you take one step in the street, it's like close to death. Taxis are constantly close to running
Did you
pedestrians
come close
over.
to
Several
meeting
times.
your maker?
It took me a couple days to adjust to the fact like you can't just walk out into a crosswalk because taxis have the right of way, not
they'll
pedestrians.
run you right over. Okay.
But lovely food, lovely people. We had great weather. It was awesome.
Surprised your dad.
Surprise
Dave loved
Pops.
it.
Yeah, he just turned 70. So excited to surprise him and spend some time with the family. But good to be back in the saddle. This is a great time of year, obviously, as you know.
Yeah, love it.
Do you like
I've
baseball
never
at all?
been, by the way, I've never been to London. Just thought I'd throw that out.
It's awesome.
Never been there.
It's one of my favorite international cities. I would put Barcelona up there. I've been to
You've been to Barcelona?
I've been to Madrid. I've been to Barcelona. I've been to a lot of places, but there are a lot of places I badly want to see. Do you have a favorite international city?
Well, I've been to Nagano, Japan.
For the Olympics? Nice.
I've been to Melbourne and Auckland, New Zealand.
I have never been to Australia. I would very much like to go. Byron Bay is on my list. That's where I want to go in Australia.
I didn't love Auckland. I would rather have been in Sydney. We were there. You know what we were doing down there? We were broadcasting a game between BYU and Colorado State football.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
Good throwback.
That's why I went down there.
Good throwback.
And they had chartered this big 747, and I was up in first class while the entire football team, both teams were in the back, including Alema, who had his jaw wired shut.
You don't do yourself any favors. Like you're in first class with your 2 Pelotons or your 2 Emmys.
Let me tell you why. Because our GM had a first class ticket, and this is before 9/11, where you could just hand your ticket to another guy, and he ended up not going.
Oh, okay.
So he said, "Why don't you just take the seat?"
It is good to be Dave Fox.
I just sat up front, and I was maybe 2-3 months in. I'm 27 years old, just starting at Channel 2.
Isn't it good to be Dave Fox, though?
Well, that was the beginning of it.
But it's still great to be Dave Fox, isn't it?
It just kept on rolling downhill from there.
You know, I called you 2 weeks ago and asked you what you were doing. You remember what you said?
I can't remember now. You call me all the time.
It was mid-morning.
You and me are like Dion and Kalani.
We are. It was mid-morning.
What was I doing?
And I said, David.
Oh, I was on the Peloton.
No, you weren't. I said, what are you doing? You're like, not much, relaxing, waiting for the cleaning lady to show up, and then I might go get lunch, is what you said to me.
I don't remember saying that.
That's exactly what you said. And I said, man, it is good to be Dave Fox, because it is, right?
Oh, whatever, yeah.
You have earned it with all of your mediocre work for 35 years in the market, Dave.
Oh,
you know I love you, but you've been good, right?
Yeah, great.
Good time of year.
It's a great time of year. I love fall. You and I have talked about this. I think we agree on fall is the best because I love football.
Yeah, gotta love fall.
Love it all. Yeah.
Are you a baseball guy at all?
Well, I mean, I'm loving that the Yankees and Red Sox are playing right now, and
1-0 Yanks, 1-0.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that these 3-game series now they're playing them all in one stadium. There's no travel.
Wild card, baby.
Oh yeah, so to get that over with. But yeah, I like baseball in the playoffs especially. I mean, in the middle of July, I'm not just tuning in a game, between a couple of crappy teams.
Yeah.
But football, I can watch anything.
I'm with you there. Fall baseball rules. Yankees are up 1-0, top of the third. I don't know how they scored. I was busy doing radio because I grind. This is masonry. I just put in the work, Dave, as you know.
Exactly.
All right, here's what I want to ask you.
Okay.
So as you know, when it comes to the first few weeks of college football, every year I say the same thing. Observation, not conclusion. We need to now move into the space where we start concluding about what we know about Utah, BYU, and the Big 12 as a whole. Now, we'll get to BYU in a moment. They have passed every test that has been put up against them. The question is, how hard have these tests been? With Utah, we saw potentially the most talented roster in the Big 12 in Texas Tech rolling to Salt Lake, and after a really competitive start, they ran away from the Utes. Utah goes to Morgantown and undresses a West Virginia team that was without their starting quarterback, 3 running backs, 3 offensive linemen, and a tight end. I think where I'm at with Utah is where I was at the start of the season. I think they're really good. I think they have a chance to say something at the end of the season with the Big 12 championship. How good are they? Well, the main test we have so far for Utah is one they did not pass. We'll learn more when Arizona State is in town. But after 5 weeks, as we move from observation to conclusion to try to decide where you at with Utah football.
Well, it's interesting because this is actually going to come up tonight when you're on my show. But I don't think they're as bad as they looked against Texas Tech, especially since, don't forget, that game was neck and neck up until fourth quarter. So it's not like they were completely, dominated from the get-go. Yes, Texas Tech had a backup quarterback going there, but by the way, he's really good. That lets you know.
He looked amazing. LDS kid, too, which I didn't know.
It's unbelievable. And then going to the Mountaineers, you're right. What they are dealing with right now is almost absurd. I don't know how they managed to win the 2 games they did. So we might still be waiting on the conclusion phase, only because they played probably the best team that will be on their schedule. And with regards to just the Big 12, I'm not talking about non-league, perhaps the worst team that will be on their schedule. And that kind of falls into where BYU's at, if you think about that. You look at their schedule, you know what's coming up. They've got to go to Texas Tech. There's Iowa State on there. There's BYU. There's Utah on there. So I hate to put off or extend the conclusion or put it off a little longer, but I think we're still waiting a little bit here. And we're not going to learn a thing out of BYU this Friday night.
No, they're favored by 20,
and
right?
they'll cover.
Yeah, they're going to smoke West Virginia.
So I hate to say it, but I think we're still a little early on this.
So Arizona State rolls into town 2 Saturdays from now, and this has been an interesting storyline to follow because while I don't think there was a consensus pick to win the Big 12, if there was a pick that was as close to consensus as possible, it felt like it was Arizona State because they won it a year ago. Yeah. They were also the favorite in Vegas. And they start out with a pretty underwhelming win against an FCS team in northern Arizona. They lose on the road in Starkville. Mississippi State's one of the worst teams in the SEC, but it's still a road game in the SEC. You learn nothing about Texas State, but they go back-to-back at Baylor in Waco and then beat TCU at home. Mm-hmm. And Sam Levitt is starting to look like the Sam Levitt we were expecting. And it's really interesting now. Every single week, Kyle Whittingham has talked about missed tackles. They missed 10 against West Virginia, which isn't a huge number, but Kyle wants it single digits. And Sam Levitt's a running quarterback. He's an athletic kid. So what do you think we'll learn? Another game that I think will provide a stiff test, so maybe we can actually finally come to conclusions.
Here's the thing. If that becomes another Texas Tech or if it becomes another West Virginia, that's where we're going to make our determination. I feel like going into that game, Arizona State, with respect to what you just pointed out, they're still not anywhere near, in my opinion, as good as Texas Tech from what I've watched of both those teams. So Utah, stay focused, get the tackles, as you said, brought down. Dampierre's got to be good. Utah's going through a few little injuries here and there as well. But that could be the game where we finally transition from, what are the 2 words you used?
Observation to conclusion.
Because at that point, now you've played 2 top-quality Big 12 teams, and there's no more room for observation. So I'm going to put that one in that category, and I'm excited it's at 8:30 time. I don't know how the rest of you guys feel. I kind of like the night games.
Well, they're fun. I mean, the only annoying thing is you have to wait all day for it.
Well, if you're a player, that sucks. If you're a coach, that sucks. But that's fine for me. I can go to the grandson's Little League games and things like that, and then pack it up and head to the big one.
You know, my favorite part of late kicks used to be Monson just bitching about it. Because it really sucks for the writers because they're on deadline.
That's true.
And so oftentimes they essentially will be writing their column during the game, and then they'll finish the column and hope that the game doesn't have some crazy ending. But if it does, they have to, scrap it and do it all over again.
I didn't think about that.
So the writers hate the late games. But for me, it's fun because I don't have a deadline, and the atmosphere at Rice Eccles at night is phenomenal. Is really cool.
Well, and from a television perspective, it's so late that it doesn't matter to us because, it's going to end after our late Talking Sports is off the air anyway.
Right.
So we'll just, load up on stuff for the next day. The one time I actually loved, and I told you this, that 10:30 or 10 a.m. kickoff for Texas Tech because I had to broadcast the Aggies that night.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking the entire season I'm going to miss that Texas Tech game, and I didn't want to. When it came out at 10 a.m., I was like, once again, it's good to be.
Well, it's good to be Dave Fox. Of course, you analyze these kick times as how it affects you personally as opposed to the community.
Just threw that out there.
But I'm a man of the people, unlike you. I want to know how it affects the community.
Frank and Alema liked it, too, and they broadcasted that Utah State with me.
I will take nothing. I don't care what Frank says about anything, but A-Train's my guy. So if Alema's down, I'm down. But Frank's opinion is irrelevant. Yeah. One of the reasons that I was a little bit out on Arizona State, Cam Scatterbo was a cheat code. Ute fans awesome. And Cougar fans. He ran over everybody.
Really did.
They've got to transfer running back the Brown kid, but Levitt's a very, very good player. But let me go back to Brigham Young. As I referenced, they have passed every test that's been thrown their way.
Yep.
Young Bear Bachmeier has 10 touchdowns accounted for and 0 turnovers. You know how many quarterbacks in BYU history have done that? 0. Literally.
Phenomenal.
Okay? There are moments where he still looks like a freshman, but he's just such an athlete, and he's just built, like a linebacker. I have questions about his ability. Like, if they go down big and they need to air it out, I'm not sure he can do that. They did go down against Colorado, but he was.
But that was so early.
It was exactly.
They didn't have the emergency. And they survived the fans.
Yes, well. $50,000 fine, public reprimand. What does that mean? By the way, I've never.
Did you hear Deion's apology?
I did. But are you buying BYU start? Are you still waiting?
I've got to leave it in that first category.
Okay.
I want to see them against top level. Colorado's not what they were last year. I mean, that's the hot take. Hello, they're not. They just aren't. They've had injuries as well. It's a completely different team. Their quarterback's not Shedeur Sanders, who, by the way, thinks that none of the Browns quarterbacks are Shedeur Sanders. We'll see how long that lasts.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just not time yet. And here we go into Game 5, and it's the same thing. He is going to roll through an awful, awful Mountaineers team. So going to need a couple more weeks on that one as well. I'll tell you what's going to be fun, BYU Utah. Let's sit on that. Let's think about that. I realize that's the 18th, so we're still 3 weeks out from that. Now you're going to see who's really king of the hill, especially with the fans here in Utah. There's nothing better. You've experienced it your whole life. You know what I'm talking about.
Let me rephrase the question. Have you seen enough from both teams to believe that they do exist on the top tier of the conference?
That I agree with.
Okay.
100%. Because you're going into Colorado's in a hostile environment. You're down 14-0 in a flash, and it looks like they're going to run over you. By the way, no, we don't throw enough at Jay Hill and his defense. Maybe we do, but they are marvelous, what he's done with them. After Colorado scores that 14, they just they got one more touchdown, right, later.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he has really got them playing so well. And, the whole team's, playing really well. But, yes, they both deserve those accolades, what they're at. But there's a long way to go. We've been through this, Spence. I mean, BYU was 5 wins. They needed one more to go bowling, and they never got it. Couple years ago.
Probably the first year in the Big 12.
Yeah. Unbelievable that would even. There's no amount of money you wouldn't have bet, they're going to go bowling.
It's weird to consider BYU year 1 Big 12 5 wins, Utah year 1 Big 12 5 wins. Now, those seasons are not created equally. We know that Utah was decimated with injuries. I'm still scratching my head. Utah has not won a home Big 12 game yet.
Yeah, that is weird.
Isn't that wild?
But you got to remember last year was such a mess.
For sure.
And they were close on a lot of them.
But win one Big 12 home game, please.
And here it comes, maybe, Arizona State. You just talked about that. Could you imagine if they went in and didn't win that? And now you're a season and a half in and you still haven't won a home Big 12 game?
They get Colorado at home. They should run Colorado.
They should.
Cincinnati's a little sneaky. I'm not saying that they're Iowa State. I'm not saying that they're Texas Tech or even Utah or BYU. But they're a little sneaky. I mean, that's a team that look. Utah will be favored over Cincinnati, and then the final home game is K-State. K-State just got a little bit of a get right game themselves, although they haven't looked near as good as I thought that they would be. But I think it's fair to say, while your point about continuing to observe, not conclude, is well taken, only because how tested has BYU been? The one test Utah has had, they have not passed.
Nope.
But I still believe that if we're going to tier the conference, we should consider both Utah and BYU teams that at the end of the season may have something to say about.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. And I think, oh, by the way, you talked about Cincinnati sneaky. You know who else is a little bit like that? Houston. They're not good.
Much better offensively this year.
Very much so. And every now and again, you're like, oh, wow, wait a minute. That team's not so bad. But
Cincinnati
I
went to Kansas and got a win. Kansas is up and down. Houston gets Texas Tech at home this week.
Wow.
So that train is probably going to come crashing down.
We'll see.
But, yes, ultimately, I think where I feel comfortable is saying that both these teams at least should be considered Tier 1. How many teams are in that Tier 1, that continues to be difficult to ascertain. Look,
I still feel like Texas Tech is in there no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people believe at this point Texas Tech has the best win in conference. That's coming to Salt Lake and making sure you handle your business.
On Big Noon, all the hype and everything, and it obviously got to the Utes much more than it did the Red Raiders.
Here how to put this. My concern with if Texas Tech is who they look to be so far, it just means their concept has been proven, and that's just the power of the purse.
Yeah.
Which sucks
Very
because
true.
if you're not in that economic ecosystem, if you're not in that cul-de-sac with Texas Tech, then you've got work to do. Now, there are regulations that are going to be put in place. Texas Tech took advantage of a window where nobody was in charge, and credit to them. But I just continue to push back. While I believe the players should be paid, while I believe that this is a sport that has built a business on the back of employees they have not paid, I just don't want to see the teams that simply have deeper pockets win all the games.
Well, hopefully that won't be the case once, as you said, legislation starts to kick in.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a program that, you're right, took advantage quickly. They paid a softball pitcher $1 million. $1 million.
Was Kelly a pitcher? Why couldn't she capitalize on that?
She was an outfielder. But
she could have got a little NIL cash, though, right?
But, well, that was 10 years ago.
If the pitcher's worth $1 million, what was Kelly worth?
Oh, well, pitcher is going to be your highest paid player.
I know, but Kelly worth $100K?
Oh, easily.
Okay.
Yeah. It depends on how you hit.
Sure.
That's the bottom line, is at the plate. There are a lot of people that can play outfield. The only defensive position that's going to get that kind of money is a pitcher.
Yes.
They can move other players around, and that's not that tough. But if you can deliver at the plate, and she was very good at that, you're going to get your money. But I don't think UVU had that
No, probably not. But, yeah, I mean, back to the point, like if Cody Campbell's checkbook really has provided this talent upgrade, like if they go win the conference, it just feels gross.
It does, but it's look.
Name of the game.
Look at BYU basketball.
Yep.
It's the exact same thing. They're going to have one and done, these guys. DeBanza, what are the rumors, $7 million or something ridiculous?
Total between, like, endorsements.
Yeah.
I think BYU paid him $5 or something.
For 1 year.
Yeah. Wait till you see him. He's worth it. This kid is so
I get
good.
that.
Yeah.
And, I've seen bits and pieces of him, and I understand that. But I think the next thing you're going to see, at least an attempt, is to sign multi-year deals.
Mm-hmm.
Because some of these schools got to be fed up with paying a kid all this money, and then he's gone in a year. Well, Bachmeier, how long is he going to last? There's some people think he could be a 4-year guy. If that's the case, what's he going to be worth?
Well, they've got the Ryder Lyons kid coming in 2 years, and Ryder's a better player than Bear is.
Okay, well.
Well, if only there was a radio host that's been screaming about collective bargaining and negotiating and signing contracts for 5 freaking years.
That's unbelievable.
You're behind the 8 ball. Like, I've said this a million times. Ed O'Bannon filed his lawsuit in 2008.
Isn't that crazy?
You saw this coming.
Yeah.
It's your fault for not getting in front of it. Not you personally, Dave.
No, I know what you're saying.
The people in charge of the sport.
I don't have any involvement in that. But we're coming up on 20 years of that. And back then it was brushed aside. Don't forget that.
Anybody that was paying attention said, okay, this is the crack that we've been waiting for. All right.
I'm surprised it took that long, actually, after that.
You guys are also the home of our local professional basketball team.
Yes, the Utah Jazz.
So it's going to be another long year as far as wins and losses go. Jazz Media Day yesterday, 5 hours of sound. I love listening to Will. Like when Will's in the mood to engage and actually be honest and teach and not be pithy and try to make his PR staff laugh by cracking on media members, he's worth listening to. And he talked about the potential of, and he said every player in the NBA has a breakout year. Yeah. For the special players, the Tim Duncans, because he was with the Spurs, the LeBron James, the Michael Jordans, it's year one. But look, if we look at our local players, Carl had a good rookie year. He didn't become Carl until year 2 or 3. John was a backup to Ricky Green his rookie season. That's why the whole hey, Isaiah Collier broke John Stockton's rookie assist record. It's like, dude, John never played. But if we operate off of Will's premise, do you see a breakout season coming from any of these players?
Well, let me take the Stockton and Malone thing one step further really quick. It took, you talked about the rookie years and that. It took a dozen years for them to go from rookie to the NBA Finals. So just think about that for a moment before we start saying, oh, they're going to have a breakout year next year. I love what Will said. I also love when he said, he channeled a lot of stuff like, no one's going to walk through that door and we're suddenly going to be good.
Yep.
They're not going to save you. It's got to be you. But his point is so well taken. Some guys it takes 1 year, some guys 2 years, some guys 5 years. Who's going to be first? That might come up later on tonight. The easy answer right now is a guy like Ace Bailey because he's probably the most talented at the time he was drafted of any of them. And then you've got a lot of other players like Collier who can give you a headache in some areas of his game. That's just the way it is. They're all that way. Obviously, I like what Walker Kessler brings, but now he's already talking about his contract. Mm-hmm. Did that blow you away a little bit?
Yes and no. I mean,
so when he used the word frustrated, that stunned me a little bit.
I understand both sides of this. I'd be frustrated if I was Walker.
I agree, but at least he said, I'm not going to talk about it anymore. But there's a candidate. But easiest answer is Bailey, if you're asking me who. But I don't think any of them are going to be. Don't forget they're all growing up now. Last year's rookies, Filipowski, they're now the second-year players, and you got to consider the third-year players in this group as well, right?
Yeah.
And none of them have yet had that breakout season where they're suddenly, an all-star or anything like that. So it's going to take some time, but the easy answer, I think, is Ace Bailey. But you're still looking at 4 or 5 years there. But again, I'll circle back. Stockton Malone, 12 years, 10 to 12 years before they got to an NBA Finals. It takes time. There's a lot of good players out there.
But individual breakout years, Carl and John broke out far before they broke out to the NBA Finals.
I agree with that. And once they added Hornacek, it was like, oh, now we're there.
Yeah.
And they fixed it. But
Carl may have been first-team All-NBA rookie. He was like 13-10. But he didn't become Carl until John became John, and then those two just figured out how to execute, the play we all saw over and over and over.
And don't forget, the year before they went to the finals, they were in the Western Conference Finals and lost a good series to Seattle. They were on the way.
If I've said it once, I've said it a million times. We've had one Jazz team that was a championship contending team, and it was that team.
And they had to be playing against Michael Jordan.
Look. Jordan, he ripped rings off my guy Pat Ewing's fingers, Charles Barkley's fingers, Sean Kemp, Gary Payton, and John and Carl.
Man, he's left a trail in all of your NBA fandom.
You just run into that dude, and he was a killer, unlike we've ever seen in the NBA, and that includes LeBron, which is why I'll always choose Jordan over LeBron in the
100%,
historical conversation. All right, Dave, that's our time. I know you've got stuff to do.
I got to prep for you.
Television Gold tonight. Give our listeners a little bit of a tease.
Coming up tonight. Well, I'm gonna play. You guys have probably done that. I'll play the Dion apology. Incidentally, we're not going to dwell on that though too much. More comments from. I really enjoyed what you brought up. Will Hardy. Two things I love real quick. I know we got to go. Hardy and Markkanen both talking about the youth and almost chuckling. Did you hear at the end of Markkanen's comment? What is it he said? They're just
kids.
They're just kids. That's
kids.
It. And he's just kind of giggling.
And he's 28. It's not like he's 40.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then even at the end of one of Hardy's comments, he's like, "They're just so young."
Yep.
I mean, almost like they're resigned to it.
Yeah.
But that's the way this is going to work, Jazz fans. There's no more benching veterans because there aren't any. It's
Kevin Love isn't playing 32 minutes.
And neither is Nurkic. I mean, these guys are on the way down. It's all about the youth, getting them ready for 3, 4, 5 years from now.
We'll see you at 10:35.
Five questions with Spence. Love it.
Dave Fox, everybody. It's good to be Dave Fox. He's going to go home and let the cleaning ladies in and maybe get some food. All right, let's welcome in Ryan from the Dish Pros. Give him a call, 801-424-DISH. You can upgrade your television experience. You can save money on internet. Save money on a bunch of things. That's the bottom line, 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan?
And there is so much we can do for customers. And, another customer, over $120 a month today that we're able to help. And, guys, it's super simple. Call us up. You get 3 months of Dish's top package for free. You get the biggest, fastest DVR out there. You get a price guarantee with a 2-year promotion, so you don't have to worry about these price increases. Call us up, take the upgrade, let us get you set up and installed for free. We'll throw in the NFL Red Zone and the multi-sports pack free for 6 months, plus dinner at JCW's. And remember, ask about our internet solutions. Lots of internet providers right now that we have, and I guarantee I have a solution, at least one, but we'll probably might have 3 or 4. If you call us up and take advantage of this and see how much we can save you. If you're unhappy with your current internet service provider, or it's being slow or glitchy, or they just raised your price, call us up and take advantage of this, and let us upgrade you and save you money. 424-DISH. Call us now, 801-424-DISH.
Ryan from the Dish Bros, 5 o'clock hour of the program includes Bill Riley, and it comes your way next on ESPN 700. All right, let's get it. Drive at 5 time, Tuesday afternoon style. 7 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. It was rainy and cold this morning, but it has given way to some sunshine and blue skies this afternoon. Happy Tuesday to you. And as always, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. Porter Larson producing the show today behind the glass. It is Major League Baseball Wild Card Tuesday as the playoffs have begun in the world of baseball. Chicago Cubs went down early, but added a couple of runs in the seventh to beat the Padres 3-1. Early game today was the Tigers and the Guardians. Detroit wins that one 2-1. Right now, the Yankees have a 1-0 lead on the Red Sox. The Red Sox put 2 runners on last inning and advanced them to second and third base. But my guy Fried was able to strike out the final 2 batters, gets out of trouble. So now we move to the bottom of the fourth in the Bronx. Giancarlo Stanton up to bat. Looked like he popped out. I'll pop that one back. So, fall baseball, always a lot of fun. The world of professional football, as far as week 4 goes, came to a close last night with 2 decent Monday Night Football games, I guess. The Miami Dolphins held out the hapless, winless New York Jets. Tyreek Hill exited the game. He had surgery today to repair a torn ACL and other ligaments in his knee. He is out for the season. The Dolphins won their first game of the year, 27-21 over the Jets. And Bo Nix looked awesome. The Cincinnati Bengals are in trouble without their starting quarterback. The Broncos curb stomped the Bengals 28-3. Your final score there. Week 5 of pro football will begin on Thursday night at SoFi in Inglewood, where the Rams host the San Francisco 49ers. Brock Purdy did not practice today. He is still nursing a toe injury that he aggravated last week in the Niners' loss over Jacksonville. Odd week in the landscape of college football here. Both Utah and Utah State are on a bye. BYU welcomes in West Virginia to Provo on Friday night. That same West Virginia team that Utah embarrassed over the weekend. That is an 8:30 kick on ESPN. BYU is a healthy 20.5-point favorite. As we've been talking about on the show today, we're going to bring in the voice of the Utes coming up in a little bit. Bill Riley stops by. Good football conversation with Sam Bruckhouse. Andy Larson live in studio to talk some jazz. It was Jazz Media Day yesterday. We had 5 hours of sound. A lot of interesting topics, which doesn't typically happen with Media Day when it comes to most of the boilerplate stuff and the platitudes we hear from coaches and players and front office staff. But good stuff with Andy today. Dave Fox stopped by as well. I'll be on TV with Dave tonight. On KMYU at 10:35, we call it 5 Questions with Spence. And as we have discussed throughout the course of the show today, and we'll discuss throughout the course of the week, it is kind of time in the world of college football to move off of the observation phase and move into more of a conclusion period. Now, BYU has passed every test that's been thrown at them. The question is simply this: how difficult have those tests been? It got a little late early against Colorado after they went down 14-0, but Jay Hill's defense settled in after allowing Colorado to score touchdowns on their first 2 possessions and pretty much shut their water off the rest of the way. Bear Bachmeier, as I referenced earlier in the show, 10 touchdowns accounted for, 0 turnovers. He's the first BYU quarterback to do that. So as a freshman, that is obviously very impressive. Speaking of BYU Colorado, the Big 12 announced that they have fined Colorado $50,000 and given them a public reprimand, which I've never really known what that means. But Colorado has been publicly reprimanded and fined $50,000 after a derogatory chant from Buffs fans targeted the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints during Saturday's football game against BYU. The statement from the league went like this, quote, "Hateful and discriminatory language has no home in the Big 12 Conference. While we appreciate Colorado apologizing for the chants that occurred in the stands during Saturday's game, the Big 12 maintains zero tolerance for such behaviors." The chants were F the Mormons. They were heard during the they were heard from the student section during BYU's win over Boulder. Deion Sanders apologized today. Here's what Coach Prime had to say, quote, "That's not indicative of who we are. Our student body, our kids are phenomenal. So don't indict us just based on a group of young kids that probably was intoxicated and high simultaneously." Oh, wow. Deion going at it. Maybe I shouldn't have said that as well, but the truth is going to make you free. But BYU, we love you, we appreciate you, and we support you. BYU released their own statement last night. It said, quote, "We denounce all forms of religious discrimination and appreciate CU Boulder's example in rooting out these inappropriate actions. We invite all to showcase their fandom with enthusiasm and respect." So Colorado joins Arizona fans. Several fan bases have decided to take this route when it comes to BYU. It's always such a horrifically misguided look and really mean-spirited and unfortunate. I said this earlier in the show, thinking about our friends in the LDS community this week after a horrific scene in Michigan at a ward house where folks showed up to worship in the way they choose to and were brutally attacked by a murderer. 4 people lost their lives, several other injured. A ward house caught on fire. And, of course, the prophet of the LDS Church, Russell M. Nelson, passing away as well. So just wanted to send out some good wishes to our friends in the LDS community, as it's been certainly a very raw week. All right, they've gone to a break in the Bronx. The Yankees maintain that 1-0 lead. We're going to move to the top of the 5th in the wild card round of the Major League Baseball.